Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Great to have everybody here. Welcome, Maverick family. We have a special broadcast again tonight. Some special guests joining us, representing some communities down in Louisiana, where a big issue has surfaced around carbon capture and storage. I know this was even touched on a little bit during the presidential campaign as a national issue, and this is what's happening in Louisiana. It's important for us to look at what's going on there tonight, though, because what happens in these communities that we're going to highlight tonight will, I think, help set a trend or a precedent for what might come in other communities. And there are real concerns about possible environmental damage, risks to the public, health concerns, safety hazards, a whole raft of issues surrounding carbon capture and storage. And we're going to learn more about it, what it is, what the risks are, and what some people are doing to push back against it because of the current concerns they have. And we'll dig into it with our guests when we come back on the other side of this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, let's bring our guests in. I think all the way from Louisiana tonight, and there's two of our three. Oh, hang on, I have to push all the right buttons. There we go. Okay, and I think we might even have some more guests joining as the broadcast progresses tonight. Welcome all. I'm going to go around the horn and get everybody to introduce yourself so that I don't mess up. I want to make sure we get this right. So I'll start right over here.
Good evening. My name is Hope Ayi. I am an IICFS officer. IICFS stands for the International Indigenous Child and Family Services. I am one of the research and investigative officers for them.
Okay. And let's go right below you. I think that's Miko.
Hello, I'm Miko. I am chief of the Choctaw Turtle Tribe. You can see our banner behind us. I am out of the state of Louisiana, and I yield and pass to you, Chief.
Okay, sir, the floor is yours.
I'm Chief Two Feathers with the Four Winds Tribe, Louisiana Cherokee Confederation. We're domiciled in Oakdale, Louisiana. I have about 10,000 members, and I have a band in southwest of Takapaw, about 1,500 members.
Okay, thank you. So, we should really, I guess, start by explaining to people what carbon capture and storage is, what the technology is, and why it's being used. Can I get one of you, because you've studied this, you're totally familiar with the technology and what this issue is. Can one of you explain what it is, what this technology is that they want to use in your communities?
Yes, sir. So what the technology that is going to be used is they're going to drill wells, give or take around a mile deep into the ground. And what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to capture CO2, the CO2 that is being emitted by power plants, oil and gas refineries, anybody who emits CO2. What they're trying to do is they're trying to capture it, then run a big, large pipeline that spans throughout some of the US, is what they have it proposed, by 2050, and have this pipeline capture all this carbon and then in essence just inject it down into the ground. What they are looking to capture by 2050 can be anywhere above 900 million tons of CO2 that is going to be injected and is proposed to be injected by 2050. By 2030, if we look at it, it's going to be 6 years from now. They're looking to capture about 435 million tons by that day in 6 years. This is all in 6 years, needless to say, which seems like it's far away, but it's not. It's right upon us. And then this pipeline is going to be ran underneath people's homes, underneath people's property, where vegetation is, underneath some of the fresh water, in or around some of these freshwater aquifers, which actually provide water to all of these communities. And when you think about that, you start thinking about what's going to be the impact to fresh water. How are these communities going to be affected? How are people going to be affected? How's vegetation going to be affected? Not to mention wildlife. In Louisiana, there's a large industry for rice, crawfish. You have different people who like raising their own food. How is this going to affect them if there is, and it's not a question of if there's going to be any ruptures, it's a question of when. When are these ruptures going to happen? What are the effects going to be? How are they going to affect our people? When you're talking about Louisiana, you're talking about Texas, you're talking about the US, you're not only capturing one community, you're capturing millions of people. You're affecting millions of people's lives. And in essence, that's what carbon capture is. It's capturing all of the emitted CO2 that's being conducted by the industry and injecting it, underneath people, where people sleep, where people reside. So the question, yes, sir.
So the idea here behind the technology is capture the CO2 that's coming out of smokestacks, and instead of letting it go up into the atmosphere, inject it eventually under pressure into deep, deep, deep underground wells. And the goal is to mitigate climate change. This is one of the ways that they think they can combat climate change. And we're told that they can't meet the targets for the Paris Accord or for the federal government, which has set pretty strict or lofty climate change goals for 2050. They can't meet those targets without using this kind of technology. This is the only way they're saying that they can get to those targets. Is that fair?
That is fair to say, yes, sir.
Okay. And why Louisiana? Why are they so focused on your area to do this? Is there something unique about the land there, the geography?
What I was told is Louisiana has the coast. From what what I remember, Louisiana had the coastal. In other words, it was ideal for them to do this project on account of our coastal regions.
I see. Yeah, because I know that not only do they want to drill wells deep underground, they're also looking at putting it out into underwater and going down under deep underwater in some cases as well. This goes into, I guess, like a sandstone. They prefer to put it into rock formations, but I guess there are concerns that it might not always stay there, that eventually there might be leaks as well. What's the problem if these gases, these carbon dioxide gases, manage to escape? What's the risk?
So there
It
are,
is.
go ahead, Chief.
Yes, the risk. I read the pros and cons of it. It will come back into the environment and be breathed in. But that's like putting your mouth over the smoke, over the smoke pipe, so to speak, and taking in the full direct poison.
Right. And as much as they're saying this is carbon dioxide, it it's my understanding that it really isn't just carbon dioxide. There are other toxic chemicals in there, like nitrogen oxide, sulfurs, all kinds of different chemicals, depending on what kind of facility it's coming from, whether it's an electrical generation plant or a plant that's producing ammonia or whatever process they're involved in. Any smokestack industry, it's going to produce a whole bunch of different toxic chemicals that are actually going to be captured and then pumped into the ground. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And not to mention H2S, there's going to be trace amounts of H2S, which is hydrogen sulfide, which is very dangerous and can overwhelm a person within a matter of seconds once once you breathe it in. Not to mention, not too far away in Setaushah, Mississippi, there's been a rupture already, and it affected hundreds of people. Hundreds of people were hospitalized. Hundreds of people sought medical attention for, this rupture and the effects that they have. And up to this day, even months later, they had the effects, where they had troubles breathing. The way they worded it was that it was similar to having COPD, even though they never had asthma before, never had any breathing issues. Not only that, it hindered emergency personnel from being able to provide aid. For those people who don't know, internal combustion engines require oxygen in order to run. Otherwise, the combustion cannot be completed. Whenever you add CO2 into the mix, guess what? Vehicles stopped. And that was the case in this leak. The first responders' emergency vehicles, the vehicles that they need in order to provide aid for medical emergencies, they just stopped. They stalled all of a sudden because they couldn't move any longer due to the CO2 that was on the ground. CO2 is denser than air, therefore it takes longer for it to dissipate. It falls to the ground instead of just going up in the air and dissipating. What it does is that it lingers at the bottom. And so when that affects response times for emergency personnel, response time to be able to provide medical assistance to people that require medical assistance, especially when you're overwhelmed by carbon dioxide, CO2, that could lead to catastrophic effects to people. Not only that, when you question that, you're talking about a high pressure gas that is being held against its will, needless to say, exploding and rupturing within an area that could lead to catastrophic events, not only to the people, but also you have to wonder, what did it do to the vegetation? What did it do to the surrounding neighboring areas? And then you're talking about, in essence, an explosion. What about the surrounding home? What kind of effects did that lead to? And like I said, upon the investigations, even the members of the local emergency responding units there said, we have never been trained on what to look for, how to combat CO2. Whenever the people were transferred to the local area hospitals, two of the hospitals that they were transferred to didn't have the necessary training on what to look for, how to combat CO2. And when you talk about those things, it's now the question is what price are you putting on a human life? What is a human life really worth to you to be able to capture this carbon dioxide, to be able to put these pipelines near people's homes, and then the proposed well is around it's the school. Needless to say, the kids. Are you keeping, do you have those kids in mind whenever you're talking about putting a test well, a carbon capture well near a school, near surrounding homes? So that's the question.
And where exactly is all this happening in your communities? Where geographically? I have a map kind of up here, but can you explain or describe the area that we're talking about here tonight?
See, 14 miles north of Leesville, Louisiana, 14.3 miles.
So to give people a little perspective, there's Louisiana right there. The little blue dot is, I believe, the area we are discussing here tonight. Is that about right on target? Leesville right there. There's Leesville. There's the East Leesville Baptist Church.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, you're going to be in the Leesville area up into Simpson. When this project was okayed, Governor Bill Edwards was in place, and the mayor of Simpson allowed the progress to happen without notifying the public, is what our understanding is, even though we've done some digging, and which I'll yield back to Hope IE to explain that.
Yeah, there's like a wildlife management area right there. The what's that called? The Peason Ridge Wildlife Management Area.
Peason Ridge.
Yeah,
Peason Ridge.
You have churches, you have schools, you have I mean it's
Let's not forget the children. And guys, the thing that bothers me the most is that nobody's discussing long-term health-wise what this would do to our children, our elderly, our reproductive and our young children, and what long-term effects that's going to have overall. And I have said this before when we've discussed this, think back to the movie Aaron Brockovich with PG&E. These things have not been discussed enough for us to understand the long-term effects overall to our unborn children and mothers as well. So it's a very important topic to me as a mother, as a chief of a tribe. It is something that it needs a lot more research before this is allowed to move forward. Period.
Because this is new technology, really, right? So, do you feel like your communities are being used as a testing ground for this?
Guinea pigs? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Definitely. Definitely.
Yes, sir. And they don't know, like Miko was saying, they don't know the effects, long-term effects. It hasn't been around long enough for them to be able to know, hey, yes, this can cause, X, Y, and Z. And then not only that is, if you're going to have this around the area, with kids, why wouldn't you inform the parents? Why wouldn't you let them know, hey, by the way, they're looking at building this near areas that could be affected, that could lead to long-term effects. Do they? We don't know. We don't understand. And then whenever it comes to being able to, for instance, we have 2 tribal leaders on the call right now. The EPA in their website states that they sent letters out to all of the government officials as well as all tribal leaders in the area for public comment. Needless to say, our 2 tribal leaders on the call right now are still awaiting that letter. That letter still has not been received. They have not seen it. Where is it? Do we know? Did they pick and choose what tribal leaders they're going to send this to? Did they say, oh, no, we're going to choose this one. We think this one might help, and that's the question. When you hold a public meeting at a golf course, or you're looking to hold a public meeting at a golf course, does that really tell you it's public? Are you really creating a public, is that a public venue, I should say? Whenever you talk about public meetings, that's exactly what it should be. And all the public should be notified. How are you notifying the public? How are you letting them know? Is posting a sign in front of the courthouse enough? Just saying, hey, by the way, we're having a public meeting. Does that really constitute public? when you ask yourself the question, how many people show up to the courthouse in a daily basis? You're not going to reach the vast majority of all of your community by saying, yeah, we're holding this here. Oh, by the way, if you didn't come read the sign, oh, well, shame on you. You should have gone to the courthouse every day. You should have seen that. Why? It's your duty to do that. No, sir, I believe it is the duty of not only our elected officials, but also higher than them, to be able to inform their communities and inform them of, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. This is how we're going to do it. And guess what? We don't have enough information yet to deal with this or to know what to do with this. And then my question to the people is when a government entity such as the EPA says, you know what, we're cleaning our hands of this, we're turning this over to the state of Louisiana to approve or reject where they want these wells to be, that comes and asks you the question. The EPA's sole foundation is exactly that, the Environmental Protection Agency. Mm-hmm. It is for them to protect the public, to protect the people from what these large corporations are wanting to do, or how they want to run their business, or where they decide to, hey, you know what, let's just go choose Louisiana. Why? That's what gives us the more bang for the buck, and that's where we're going to save money. Why? There's coastal areas. We're looking at doing this not only inland, but offshore. And then when you say offshore, you ask yourself the question is, how is this going to affect, Louisiana, as Chief Wiggins said, is a big coastal state. One of their main foods that they love to eat, they enjoy to eat, because I enjoy it, is wild sea life, fish, shrimp, crawfish, and then the question begs is, if there is a leak, not only inland, but what if there's a leak offshore near the coastal lines? Is how is that going to affect the sea life? How is that going to affect the people that are now going to be eating the sea life? Because in case people do not know, whenever you mix CO2 with water, it's not a very good combination. Because at that point in time, what you're doing is you're changing CO2 into carbonic acid. Needless to say, what the last part states is acid. And the way that it is pointed, it's a weak acid. But nonetheless, it is an acid. What does an acid do? And there's a couple of things that acids are designed to do. Either kill organisms or clean them out, wipe out.
Right.
Get rid of it. That's the only main purposes for acid. Clean house, or guess what? We there's something that we need to do here. And as the chiefs are saying, this isn't only going to affect people, but also the food that our kids are going to eat in 10 years from now. When studies were done by Dr. Friedman, and when the study simulated a small leak, and this study took 300 days to conduct, but within those 300 days, what they found out was there was other metals that were being released on the rock formation: thallium, barium, uranium, and all these things we have in our body. But whenever you start introducing more of those chemicals to your body, what happens then? The occurrence of other diseases shows up. Your body is designed to naturally regulate these chemicals that are being introduced into your body. What happens when you start introducing more? Then guess what? You start having issues. You start having cancers. You start having diseases. You start having trouble breathing, things of that nature. So when you start saying, we're going to use you as a guinea pig, we're not going to do any studies. In the permits, they won't even tell you what type of test chemicals are going to be using to test these test wells, to see if they're going to contain this material, to see if they're going to be able to hold this material And not to mention, CO2, carbonic acid, is a very corrosive material that, how often are you going to have to change these pipelines? How often are you going to have to go and dig in these people's lands that you're saying, by the way, here goes money, just be quiet, leave us alone, let us do what we have to do, and we'll keep you happy. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to provide a lease that's going to benefit you. That's what they're saying. It's going to benefit you. You're going to have money. You're going to be able to, just let us do what we do. In 5 years, don't worry about it. We're going to come dig up your land again because we have to replace all of these pipes, because they can't even tell us how long these pipes are going to be able to withstand this injection.
So Miko, maybe you can speak to this. What companies are we talking about here? And can you explain how the money's...
That's what I came off the mic to mention, is through the little notification that Vernon Parish and we all received, is Vernon Parish has been designated as the first initial test site. It is set to start in the first quarter of 2025. They set aside $10 million in the event of a catastrophic event. And in that, when you break down the numbers, that means that the Vernon Parish residents are only seeing worth $1,000 per acre of land for a catastrophic event to happen. And I'm sorry, my children's lives mean more than that to me. So 10 million is nowhere near enough to tell me that this is worth it. But the fact that they're willing to say $10 million has been set aside tells you that they're prepared for something awful to happen. I am not okay with these numbers. I'm also not okay with what I'm seeing it's going to do to our overall environment. Louisiana is covered in forestry. It's going to take out forestry work for a lot of people. My uncle is a logger, has been for many, many years. It's been his whole life. His sons, same thing. Bottom line is going to wind up affecting what is known as sportsman's paradise, and that is the coined phrase for Louisiana. There's a reason for that. And I'm very concerned with, when you look at politics in an overall agenda, your 2030 agendas, what they lay out is a planetarian-based diet. They lay out these 15-minute cities. This all seems to be falling in line with ensuring that people that are living in a sportsman's paradise have the ability to grow crops, have the ability to hunt, fish. It's stripped. They're stripping our entire ability to continue our culture, our heritage, and overall, we're being told what to do, not what can we do. They have not approached myself. They have not approached Chief Wiggins here. And I have spent, 2 weekends in a row on calls with at least 10 other chiefs inside of the state of Louisiana, and none of them were notified of this either. And I know that none of my members were aware of it. I can only think and vouch that most of Vernon Parish residents are unaware of this too. So trying to get the news out, trying to get the awareness out of what is happening is a must. So I, again, extend a very warm thank you for having us on here tonight, because we do have to reach this to the public's eye. My understanding also was whenever this was reached as an agreement, they were not having to notify the public. This could have been an behind the doors closed scene. It was okay. Since 2023, the laws have changed, and now they have to notify us, which is where Hopai is discussing the fact that they were going to address the public at a golf club. But I'm not okay with a golf club. This should be in a municipal center where the public is aware and can show up, and it can be on the screens if people are standing outside can still hear. I'm not okay with the way it's been handled. I do feel like some of the public officials are overly involved, but then to talk to them face to face, they're also stating that they're not involved with it. They didn't want it. Sheriff Sam Kraft has gone on record, and I believe he's also told Chief Wiggins that he wasn't okay with it, although the initial reports was that he was on the signing of this deal. So a lot of information needs to be given to the public, the residents, the Indigenous community by the politicians that signed off on this. And with that, I yield. Chief Wiggins, any thoughts on your end?
Well, I'd just like to say this. I don't know. I've heard dead vegetation. Okay. Dead vegetation. And they tell me what I heard, hundreds of miles could kill the vegetation. That's from the grass to the trees. Well, that will affect my people. I have many people all across the state of Louisiana, especially Vernon, Beauregard, Allen Parish, Rapides, but they're all over the state. But what I'm concerned about with how long would this keep the vegetation dead? And I've heard 20 years. Well, if it's 20 years, my people will not know how to plant corn. That generation will lose out. My people are close to nature. The Indian is close to nature. Without nature, what happens to the Indian? What happens to the rice farmers here in Louisiana? The crawfish growers with the poison waters?
And let's
What
not
has
forget
happened to
Tabasco.
the
Let's not
deer?
forget Tabasco and Avery Island. Let's not forget our sugarcane fields. I mean, we have
Yes,
a
yes.
huge commodity in what our land provides. And with them destabilizing it for up to 20 years, we're going to lose all of that. And I can't imagine how that will hit our economic governmental impact as well. Avery Island produces all of Tabasco, and everybody knows what Tabasco is. I believe you probably do, Rick, and you're all the way in Canada. So just imagine we've got black bears out there that run through that are known. You've got state parks like Kisatchie National Forest, tons of others that are all going to be affected by this. So again, I just can't believe that even our public politicians are on board with this. And I call on Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser to answer, to talk to this. His seat is literally to preserve our state. And I haven't heard what his standpoint is on this yet. And I would love to know what he's thinking right now and how this even happened. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
That
There we
probably
go.
took care of it.
There you go.
I don't know why it does that. It does it every once in a while. Even without a leak, there will still be some environmental damage because as the pipelines are laid, I understand you'll lose some sensitive ecological areas, including some wetlands. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I have. We have a tribe, Chief Dordor. Her tribe is Point Olachine. They on the east coast of Louisiana. That tribe has been there many, many moons. That tribe makes their living off fishing. And how will it will affect? This is bad for everybody. This is bad for everybody. That's all I can say. I haven't read nothing good on this. They're saying they make synthetic oil out of it. I'm really not researched that good, but I don't believe that.
What companies are
you know.
involved in this?
So you have a lot of companies. You have Atheon, Exxon Mobil, and underneath them you have other subsidiaries of these companies. They all have Capture Point LLC is another company that is working on permits. Currently, right now in the state of Louisiana, there are 11 permits that are sitting in draft form, and you have 14 permits that have already been approved. And the question is how can you approve a permit once again without having any comments, without notifying the people that these are going to be affected? And the way that they're doing it, as Miko stated, the way that they got around from, okay, let's do a large public comment is by saying, oh, this is going to be a test well. You know, this is what we're going to do is this is only a test, you know, and it's kind of like you think about the emergency broadcasting system, and this is the way I like to think about it. Whenever you're sitting down watching TV and you hear that alert come on, and this says this is only a test. So many times people are going to hear that word test, and that's just the way your brain is designed to function. When you hear something repeated so many times, when it's like the boy who cried wolf, you know, so many times that somebody cries wolf, then all of a sudden, guess what? When those test wells, if you read the permit, those wells were designed for testing. Once the test is done and they can say, oh yeah, we have successfully tested, what is going to be the end result of that well? It's not just going to get plugged up and forgotten, At that point in time, what they're going to do is, okay, we already have the test well in place. Nobody fought us on it. We didn't have to have public comment. But now what we're going to do is now we're going to start, injecting the CO2 into those test wells because we know they can stand up. So that's another way that I myself feel and opinionate that the companies are getting around having to have a public comment and being able to tell people. And then back to your question about vegetation. When you think about erosion, when you disturb the ground, you're talking about 4-foot pipes is what the proposed, what they're proposing, 4-foot pipes. You're talking about a 4-foot pipe that extends hundreds of miles throughout the state of Louisiana, okay? Not only that, around the U.S., when you disturb the ground, no matter how many times you try to backfill it, erosion takes over. And what happens is when this natural ground is disturbed that was put in place for us to be able to grow, for us to be able to enjoy, and yet you come and disturb it, erosion takes over and it erodes a lot quicker than if it would have never been disturbed. And that's, so back to the vegetation, back to how this is going to affect the ground. Those are the effects. You have erosion coming, less time for erosion to occur. Not to mention, once erosion does occur, how are you going to come and backfill that ground? You're going to introduce ground that is not native to the area. But why? You have to backfill it somehow. They're not just going to leave it in a rut. So now you're introducing ground, and like Chief Wiggin is saying, you're affecting crops. You're affecting the indigenous way of life. So in essence, what you're doing there is now you are depicting the freedoms that everybody so-called says. Everybody has freedoms. You're taking that. You're disturbing the heritage that is there, because guess what? You will no longer be able to teach your kids, your grandkids, how to grow crops. Why? We can't do it. Why? This ground is no good anymore.
Would there not also be increased risks of groundwater contamination and possibly even earthquakes because of the pressure that's built up over time?
Yes, sir.
We're talking immense amounts of pressure.
Yes, sir, there is. And then not to mention, if you look at the permit tells you that there is an aquifer around the area, and then there's 9 drinking wells in the surrounding area of where these test wells want to be placed. And like Miko was saying, if you look at the proposed bill, you're talking about $170 billion. That is not million, you're talking about billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars that is going to be spent in capturing this carbon and running these pipelines. But yet you're not factoring in, if a catastrophic event happens, like Miko was saying, you only have $10 million set aside.
It doesn't seem like very much at all.
Not at all. And like I said, at that point in time, you're now putting a price on someone's life. And that just, to me, doesn't sit right. You're putting a price on my kid. You're putting a price on what my wildlife is worth. You're putting a price on my way of life. You're putting a price on my heritage. Guess what? That has already happened to the indigenous
our absolute
people.
Culture is at risk, guys. It's just that's the bottom line. The culture is at risk to our entire state at this point. And as we would like to think, this is all a state of Louisiana thing. Are they coming after us? And Chief Wiggins, you can correct me if my numbers seem wrong, but my guesstimate is the state of Louisiana is probably at least 80% indigenous. The state is engulfed in indigenous.
I would agree. I'd agree. 80%. Yes.
You're stripping our culture away from us, but I can't just say, okay, it's only the state of Louisiana, because as Hopai has already discussed, and I'm pretty sure you are very aware of, Mr. Walker, the carbon capture is happening globally. International Indigenous Children and Family Services has already reached out and spoken amongst Alberta. There's a carbon capture happening there. And in Australia, they were able to ban the tribal leaders there were able to get a carbon capture banned off of their tribal grounds due to these types of concerns. So another reason why now us chiefs here in the state are having to band together, and I'm hoping within amongst multiple podcasts like this one and getting the news out there, the residents' awareness, we can all band together globally, because this is not, in my overall view, not just a state issue. I think they're planning on trying to connect all of these. I would yield back to Hope IE on that, but it looks like they're wanting to connect all the pipelines to then stretch across. So that's going to engulf all of Turtle Island. What is that going to long term do? It's going to affect us all. It's not just the state of Louisiana at that point. So it should be something that everybody wakes up to. This is a huge problem. Just a huge problem. But I yield back to you to answer on those pipelines, Hope IE.
Yes, ma'am. And then if I may share my screen, I just want to show the proposed pipeline with numbers, because as you know, numbers speak volumes. And I was actually able to find the proposed actual here it is. So if you look at this is the 2050 total. So you're looking at 21,000 kilometers of trunk lines and 85,000 kilometers of spur lines, equivalent to maybe equal to 22% of U.S. natural gas transmissions pipeline totals. You know, the scenario is they're looking at capturing 929 million tons of CO2 per year, you know, with 106,000 kilometers of pipelines, and the capital in service at this point, as I stated, you're looking at $170 billion. And this gives you the actual proposed 2050, what they're wanting to see by 2050. You know, and when you look at it, you can see you have Princeton University, you have High Meadows. You know, these are all well-renowned people, and this is, in essence, their carbon mitigation initiative. You have High Meadows Environmental Institution. You know, all on these proposed stretch of, you know, this is what they're looking at. You know, and if you look at that, it stretches. There's only a small piece of the U.S. that isn't engulfed, I would say, for nonetheless, engulfed in these proposed pipelines at this point in time. And as I stated, it's just, you know, it's unreal. It's unreal on what they're looking and what they're proposing to do here.
That's a massive undertaking. And when I look at that chart, that map, it's as you say, Miko, this is spanning the entire country, really. Which, you know, is why we need to highlight what's going on here to at least make people aware. What is the process that we're going through here right now? Does the public actually get a say, or is there a requirement for a vote on this, or do the public officials just get to make a decision and then proceed?
Seems like at this point the public officials have made the decision and they're proceeding. But like I stated, whenever this was set forth, and I believe it was in 2020, maybe 2021, is what I had read. Governor Bell Edwards was still in office, and we've had the other public officials who are now rotating out of their political seats this term and are unavailable to come back in, I understand. They've filled their seat for the length of time. Whenever they all signed on to this, they didn't need our proposal to bring it to us. In 2023, the laws changed, making that be something that they had to address the public for. Maybe it's just a notification. Do they need our vote? They haven't spoke to us about it. To my knowledge, there's been no public open forum for just the residents to discuss. And another one of my grave concerns, and if you look at that map, and I've mentioned this to Hope IE and Chief Wiggins, there are multiple homes. I think I had Hope IE look it up earlier. It's like 200 residents in Parish that currently hold oil gas rights lease. Now, let's back that back around. And I'm going to use Disney as an example. There was a lawsuit because, and it's current, it's in the news, you can look it up. A husband and wife went to Disneyland. She had massive food allergy. She tells her waiter about the allergy, asked him to ensure not to have this on her plate. It was still somehow in the dish. She actually passes away right there on the resort, goes into anaphylactic shock. Okay? Fast forward, husband's trying to sue Disney for this because she was very clear, I have an allergy, and they still served it to her. But because they downloaded the Disney app 5 to 6 years ago, his lawsuit is squashed because in the fine print, it states that they have given all rights to Disney to do this. So it's covered that the app on their phone has protected Disney from any wrongful death suit. Now, go back to the oil and gas lease. If you have a oil and gas lease on your property inside of Leesville, Louisiana, or Vernon Parish, what have you signed your rights to, and are they able to come in and just dig without your permission now because you signed away to it 10 years ago, and now you're receiving those royalties as they dig? And if that's the case, we put up a fight, we get these permits stopped, we get them to, are they going to be able to go onto these 200 residences' homes and begin doing this anyway? So,
Is the economic benefit obviously is directed at those people who lease some of the land for the pipelines and for the carbon capture and storage wells wherever the land is affected. But what about the overall community? Is there taxation and then economic benefit to the community at large as a result of this? Is that what they're partly selling this on? No?
No.
Nothing?
nothing.
Actually, Louisiana has actually put together a police jury of different people. And in that jury, you have 2 people that have prior experience with carbon. And even they're saying, guess what? This is not a good idea. We don't suggest we do this. It is not a good idea. I don't think that we should do this because, the effects, we don't know the effects of it. We don't know what it can cause. We don't know what it will do, and in essence, what they say once again is that the corrosive nature of CO2 and the potential of groundwater contamination. Every article you read, that is what's going to be discussed, and then just to kind of reiterate further in that article, it says that both men in the industry said the corrosive nature of the CO2 was eating the well-bore tubing up in a short period of time. And when they were asked how short, they said 3 to 6 months.
What?
Yes,
3
sir.
to 6 months?
That is correct.
About the upkeep that's going to be and the finances to keep all of that, and then you're disturbing the ground, digging it up, trying to make sure that it's constantly under wraps. I have a good feeling there's going to be a bad catastrophic event, don't you guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I'd like to also bring up, I spoke with firemen and I spoke with a gentleman there last week. I asked him this question. Fire trucks will not be able to respond, say a school fire or something like that, because the PTO needs the oxygen, and they say that the CO2 is carbon, depletes the oxygen. So that puts children at risk in one sense. Same way with residential fires. They're not equipped and trained to work in this environment with this carbon.
Is the state and our local governments using legislation, or are they what are they doing to kind of push the pipelines through and sort of force this through in areas where people are maybe opposed? Are they doing things to compel people to accept this, or have we reached to that point yet?
So I don't think we've reached that point yet. Once again, as I stated before, the EPA has since given power to the state to be for them to decide where they're going to allow. And whenever you're talking about a state, you ask yourself the question is, as I stated before, first responders said they have had no training. Hospital personnel said they had no training. So you ask yourself the question, has the state officials, the people that are elected, the people that are there, have they ever had the training? Do they know what they're dealing with? or are they just saying, hey, by the way, and the way that the big companies are putting this together as kind of a benefits package is it's going to create jobs. You're going to need people to weld pipelines. You're going to need people to do this. You're going to need people to do that. So guess what? We start here. You're going to have, more people moving in here, people spending money here, people, leaving their hard-earned money here, and that's how you're going to benefit from this. But once again, when you have the experts, you ask yourself the question, when you have the experts give up that power to be able to say yes or no, we're going to protect the people, to state officials, what's wrong then? Are they just trying to say we don't want to deal with this because we know something's going to happen and we don't want to be involved in that. We don't want to be part of the suit. We want to just say, hey, you know what? No, we gave them the authority and they decided to do it. It had nothing to do with us. We're just going to come.
Then who do you sue? Seriously, then who do you sue?
Correct. And then you ask yourself the question, is they're they're saying, hey, now we'll just come and investigate later once something happens. We're going to come do the investigation. We'll deal with it. And then we'll just figure out, we'll let you know what happened. And then maybe from there, we'll do lessons learned. So in essence, yes, as you stated before, you're using the people, the residents of Louisiana. Once again, as Miko has stated, 80% indigenous people. That kind of sounds like what they did to the indigenous people before. So you're just reverting back to your old ways. You're coming back and saying, yes, by the way, we protected you for a little bit, but guess what? Now it's our turn. Now we tell you what to do now. We tell you how to do it, and we don't care what your voice is. We don't care how you're being heard. We don't care how this is going to affect you. All we care about is the jobs it's going to create. And
what about the jobs it's going to lose? Like I just got through pointing out, sugarcane workers will be out of jobs, crawfish workers, and let's not forget how much of French Creole cuisine we got there. Everybody in the lower part of that boot does something along those lines. Boudin work, crawfish work, they're all going to be out of jobs because, and I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to eat any of it at that point, would you? Okay. I mean, this is a catastrophic event already in my mind. Maybe I've jumped hurdles, and I would beseech someone to make me think differently, though, at this point, because there has not been any evidence anywhere that the International Indigenous Children and Family Services, I even spoke with the reporters for KPLX and KAX in Alexandria and Shreveport, Louisiana. Nothing good is coming from this. So if somebody else has got some way to tell me that it's worth it, it's a Green New Deal, it's a climate change, it will erode and help our climate not cave in upon itself, I'm not buying it. You don't have enough backed evidence. This would be the same as somebody trying to tell me to vaccinate my kid with a vaccine that just came out 2 days ago and you have no evidence of what it's going to do. Until you can tell me better, I'm not for this. And I would think that every resident would be in the same shoes. I'm not.
And on that note, let's take a little break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll get into a discussion about what you guys are doing to stand against this and protect your communities. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, we are back, and let's talk about what is being done in your communities about this. Who would like to start?
So-
I will yield to, I hope you can discuss it because International Indigenous Children and Family Service is trying to step up to the plate. So I'll yield to you, but anybody who wants any information, please do reach out, and hope you make sure you give them the website, okay?
Yes, ma'am. So some of the things that the IICFS is actually doing to try to combat this is not only getting the word across to all of the community and all the affected people in the area, but we also have a petition online currently to stop this, so we can be able to send this petition to the elected officials in the Louisiana area to let them know that, guess what, we're not okay with this. We are not okay with this. We will never be okay with this. And we urge people to go online and actually sign the petition for us. So that way, the more people that sign this petition lets them know that, guess what, we want our voices heard, and we will be heard. Because once again, it's a lot of people think, okay, it's going to affect Louisiana. I live in other states. You know, what does this have to do with me? Guess what? Louisiana is just the starting point, and from there, it's going to go. You know, it's going to go around the whole nation. The whole nation will be affected. You know, at one point in time, as we saw previously in the 2050 proposal, it's going to be inundated with pipelines everywhere. You know, so this petition that we have is to terminate the CO2 project in Louisiana. And once again, tribal chiefs are standing their ground. You know, they are chiefs, they're leaders among our people. You know, and whenever you talk about leaders, that's exactly what they're doing. They're wanting to ensure that their tribes, their communities, and not only their communities, but other communities are not affected by this, don't see the effects of this. Why? Because there's no studies there. There's, you know, how can you tell us, you know, what effects we're going to have if you don't know? You know, so we want our voices heard. We want all of our tribal members' voices to be heard. Everybody in the Louisiana area's voices to be heard. And not only that, everybody who's watching this podcast, everybody who has interest. Because once again, as they say, it's coming to a town near you when you don't know. And not only that is, are you going to be informed? You know, are they going to tell you what you have to do and when and why? And we're going to put this pipeline underneath your, you know, around your house. We don't care what you say. You know why? There's already pipeline infrastructure set up. We might as well connect. You know, and that's just in our eyes, that's wrong for you to do that. And that's not something that they should do. And once again, we want to make sure if anybody has any questions, if you want to see petitions set up, if you want to know what the IICFS does, you're more than welcome to visit iicfs.org. And that's where you will see this petition. That's where you will see what IICFS stands for, what we do, and why we do it.
And there's the URL there, iicfs.org.
And with that, I
And
yield to Miko for any further comments on what we're doing to stand up.
Well, Hopai, thank you very much. You are an asset, I'm sure, inside of IICFS more than you realize. So thank you very much for all your research and your efforts into this. It is a grave concern to myself and all the other chiefs that I've spoken with. So I cannot imagine that other tribal leaders around that. And again, I beseech somebody to change my mind about what I'm understanding this to mean in the end, first off. But then I would also like to speak to those that were formally told of this, which I know, Hopa, you discussed the fact that they said some tribal leaders were reached out to. I would like to talk with them and see what their point of view is and why they were okay with this back in the very beginning of this, and especially without notifying and having a good public open forum. I am gravely concerned that politicians can decide to take over our land, our resources, and never discuss this with our people, never discuss this with the residents, the districts that they work for. They're supposed to work for we the people. That would not be an open-ended deal where your officials are making grave decisions like this without discussing the entirety of the outcome of this with us. If you're willing to set away $10 million and discuss the fact that there could be a catastrophic event, that should be discussed and then openly with every resident being behind closed doors, signed without being discussed amongst ourselves. That's my 2 cents. And Chief Wiggins, I yield to you, sir.
Well, the public, I have noticed this. I went and spoke in the public several times. I'm not shy. I go to different ones and ask them, what do they think about this carbon induction? They've never heard of it. The public, the general public here in Louisiana, I just seen today where they had a coalition formed fighting this alliance, but it just don't seem like the public is really aware and the dangers of it. I'll talk to them a little bit, and I'm talking educators, people in the working force, and that's the feedback I get, and it just scares me because the people don't realize the hazard and all these chemicals, and they're running this through concrete. Concrete is porous. I don't know how the chemical reaction. I know concrete has high acid, but I don't know. There again, I don't believe it's been enough studies on this project for them to even be tested.
it seems to me the effluent that is going to be captured is not just coming from Louisiana. It'll be coming in from other states, from all over the place. And then it isn't just, we're not just talking about a risk level or a risk being taken for a year or 2 years or just while the pipelines are active. We're talking about a risk that will be present forever. 50 years, 100 years, 500 years from now, 1,000 years, because you'll have these gases underground, trapped under pressure, and at some point in the future, if ever those gases escape, they become a lethal, toxic hazard.
Correct.
That's correct.
They're making us live on top of a toxic bomb, guys.
That's it.
And in the permitted case that once the well is decommissioned, or if a well is to be decommissioned, they're only going to have to monitor it for 30 years. When you ask yourself the question, how many elected officials, how many CEOs are you going to go through in 30 years? And then you have a file stored away in a file cabinet, or even in a server with millions of other files. Who's really going to remember to check on this well to ensure that nothing is happening? Hey, by the way, yeah, we used to have a well. Oh, it's okay. It'll be all right. And as you stated, Rick, it's like you're gonna have all of these gases trapped under pressure underneath you, and then all of a sudden, one of your grandkids, great grandkids, great grandkids goes and decides, hey, you know what? I need to dig a well because I want fresh drinking water. And next thing you know, this well water is contaminated. You have a catastrophic failure. And once again, as Miko has stated, when you set aside money for a catastrophic event in the amount of $10 million, that lets you know that it's not a question of if it happens. We've already set aside a reserve to pay for the damages that this is going to cause in a catastrophic event. And if you look at the fines that are being assessed, that were assessed during the rupture in Mississippi, it was $4 million, nearly close to $4 million. And if you look at some of the violations that were present, there was you never informed national enforcement that there had been a rupture that big. It happened within a matter of minutes. You're trying to save people's lives. And then you're saying, guess what? I'm anticipating this is going to happen. So I'm just going to give you, here you go. Once again, it's like these larger companies. It's money. Here you go. Here goes $1 million for your troubles. Leave me alone. And let me keep, making my billions over here. But yet your life to me and your family's life and your well-being and your heritage at that point in time, you're saying the indigenous heritage at that point in time is worth $10 million. So,
these concerns are not overblown, because I can tell you that in my community, not far from here in a little town called Wheatley, which is part of our larger Chatham-Kent area here in southern Ontario, in 2021, a building in Wheatley, Ontario exploded unexpectedly, just blew up, devastating a part of the downtown of this very small community on the shore of Lake Erie, right? It's a fishing village. The reason it blew up is because of an abandoned gas well that began to leak. And this abandoned gas well was leaking methane gas and I believe hydrogen sulfide. And the gas well, they're not even sure how old the old gas well is, but it dates back at least to the 1890s. And so in 2021, a building blows up. So what we're talking about here is not overblown. These are very legitimate concerns. And I totally understand your concerns with this, because as I say, we could be talking about affecting 3 generations from now, or 4 generations, or 1,000 years from now. We don't know what the long-term impact from this might be. So what are there protests being planned, or what kind of community activities and pushback are we looking at here?
So I yield that to Miko. So that way, but we are, if need be, we are planning protests.
Yep.
Because that's
Yes,
how,
lady.
sometimes the only way our voices can be heard. And they don't like it, but guess what? We're not going to sit around with our hands in our pockets and say, it's okay, you can do whatever you want to us. It's happened once to the indigenous community, and we saw the devastating effects it had on the indigenous community.
Still living it. We're still living those effects.
There's people that are still affected by it. And then this, you have grandkids that are affected by it. You have parents, you have mothers, you have fathers, you have all kinds of people that are still affected by what they did to the indigenous community. And then now you're coming in and saying, guess what? We're going to do it all over again. Why? We hope you've already forgotten what we've done to you before. We hope you don't remember. We think that the generation is well enough to not remember that. And as you stated, when you're using seismograph information from the 1960s inside of a permit to say the ground is stable, we can go ahead and build this well, how is that relevant information when you're using old information from 1960? Why don't you want to do one now? Why? Because you know that they're shifting in the ground. This could happen, and once again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how much money you're gonna have to spend to fix it. So I yield to Miko on that.
I go back to my concern, and this is probably because I got into a little wordy argument trying to do my own looking into this, and I brought this up to Hope and Chief earlier. I want to know what the testing is, what the agent is that they're using in these testing wells, of which the gentleman would not answer me. You would have heard a pin drop through the phone, because he literally said, I don't understand what the problem is. This is just a testing well. It's not as if it's already set into place. So why all of a sudden this concern? You have to be testing something along the same lines of the same gas that you're proposing to put down in that well. So what is that product? It may just be a testing well right now in Vernon Parish, but you're proposing to turn it into this. And so in testing with it, what is also the chemicals that you're using to push down in that well to use for the testing, so we're not basing it off of a 1960 project? You won't answer me that. And it's a concern as well, because it's got to be a pretty close match to CO2 if it's not CO2 itself. Okay. So the bottom line here is they've got a lot of answers that they need to give us. We have a lot of questions, and moving forward, yes, protest, yes, petition, please, everyone sign the petition. If you can't, come on board, do some research, come on board with our team and help everybody look into what's going on. Do the research yourself, submit it back to us, let us compile it. It's going to take a group of people to combat something that is just now being dumped on us at the last second. This has been in the works for a handful of years, and it's just now been publicized into a public article that then went a little bit viral inside of the local community, enough that the tribal chiefs were able to step up to the plate and start trying to sort it out.
So do you have legal options here?
Legal options, yes. At this point, we are looking for the International Indigenous Children and Family Services, the international tribunals, to come forth, serve a cease and desist. One was already sent out. At least a cease and desist at this point till you can give us some better answers, give us a lot more information, be more informative to us. But at that point, I'm calling on the tribunals. I'm calling on our tribunal people to step up and then start combating. We have two judicial systems, so you got to talk with ours as well as we have to talk with you. You didn't give us this gratitude to come forth and talk to us about this. So now we're asking through a cease and desist to hold off, give us time to comprehend, give us more data, let us understand the process. And if there is anything that we can do to move forward without having to have this be what is actually done, I would prefer that. I would ask and pray that every tribal citizen, every tribal member, and every tribal chief really dig into what's going on. With the state having at least 80% Indigenous people, I would say that we should be able to put a stop to this. I can't say that we will, but I, in my heart and in my soul and in my spirit, believe that we are all standing one united right now through this. So come forward. Reach out to us. I'm here. I'm not afraid to spend hours talking about this. Everyone on this call knows me very well and knows that I'm up at 4, 5, 6 a.m. The days I don't go to bed. So I'm willing to put my life out there to decide what we've got to do to figure a better option. I have 5 young children, and their futures depend on this, as well as the rest of my tribal members' children and their grandchildren. And I have no idea what this is going to do for their future, but it doesn't sound good. The food that they're going to eat is going to be corroded with this mess. Even the livestock, anything that we have so far as hunting, fishing, gaming, it's all going to be affected. And then we're consuming it. It's a grave concern to me. And I reference back to what happened in Hinckley, and Aaron Brockovich had to step up and deal with it after the fact. And I want to stop it before it is an aftermath. We have a chance and a window and an opportunity. So let's look into this right, and let's do what we can for our people. And that right there is what every tribal leader should be doing. And I yield to you, Chief Wiggins, for anything that you want to add.
Well, I strongly agree with you. I will stand up against this project unless, as you said, if it could be explained, some of these questions that we have. But I'm concerned not only just about my tribe, but all citizens of Louisiana. You know, the ones that don't know. Uh, I've been I've been around enough to know uh, the government don't seem to have no conscience about experimentation or losing a few people. As far as coming up with this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm almost 70 years old. It's like putting a big bomb under Louisiana. Uh, it holds more pressure than gas, and whenever it breaks bigger than gas does. It travels faster than gas, what I understood, and that is not good in no kind of way you look at it. But there again, it goes back and vegetation. We get our oxygen from trees. Vegetation. If it kills the vegetation, there goes the fresh air. There goes the clean waters. And like I said, it's supposed to be Louisiana sportsman paradise. Where all the animals gonna go when with all this dead going on and these issues with the water? I have a very big concern. And yes, if I have to, I'll take my members, go wherever I got to, and we will stand against this project unless something could be come to the table and talk and let us be explained to us more. But this does no good for the future of my people. I pass it on to you.
It seems to me that the risk is potentially so high here that people would be further ahead if it was just released into the atmosphere the way they always have done it, because at least Mother Nature would have a fighting chance to cleanse itself in that way. But when you concentrate it underground, under pressure, store it up, years, maybe even decades worth of industrial effluent underground, under a community where people are living, it seems to me like the risk is just off the charts. And if at some point it does escape, it would be just catastrophic beyond almost comprehension. It would make disasters like Bhopal look like nothing in my estimation. But am I off base here with that kind of scenario?
No,
But wait, Rick, there's $10 million. That's the thing.
Right.
That's how they're portraying it. But wait, you have $10 million set aside for your catastrophic event. Here you go. Fix what you have to fix. Do what you have to do. We're going to keep doing business the way we've been doing business.
It just seems like insanity, because all this is being done in the name of environmental protection to prevent climate change. And yet what they're really doing here is setting up a scenario where the risk to the environment and human life is exponentially higher.
yes.
And almost seems inevitable at some point, because we could be talking at a catastrophic event, maybe not next year or 10 years or 50 years or even 100, maybe it's 500 years from now. But so what? 500 years from now, people are people, and those are still our relatives into the future. It's our community. It's the future of your communities.
That is correct, Rick. And then you think to yourself, there was a massive CO2 leak in Niles in Cameroon. Once again, that was not man-made. So this was natural occurring, and it killed 1,700 people. Now the question you ask yourself is, what does a man-made catastrophic event create? How many lives, how many people are going to perish? How many lives is that going to affect? You have something that was created by nature that affected 1,700 people. What do you do when you have 10 times that volume escaping all within a matter of an hour, within a matter of seconds? How is that going to affect people? And like you said, it just sounds insane. But once again, remember, the less information you provide to somebody, the more you keep people dumb, the more they think they will accomplish. But when somebody understands what somebody's trying to do, when you teach the people, when you inform the people, that's when they're properly informed, that's when people say, you know what, no, this doesn't seem like it's to my benefit. But the
That's
less
right.
information I provide you, the better. That's the way I like you. Just you knowing what you know now. We don't want you to be smarter. We don't want you to be educated. We don't, and you go back to once again what they've done to indigenous people before. We're going to teach you what we want you to know, and we're going to teach you what we want you to do. And in this case, it's like you're not teaching anymore. We're just telling you this is safe, and the way you portray it is it's to help the environment. It's to help, everybody in the world, so that way we don't have that much carbon, out in the air, out in the atmosphere. One of the things that combats, that needs carbon dioxide, killing vegetation, killing people, killing human lives. It's what price, and you go back to the word ignorant. What does ignorant mean? Lack of knowledge. You don't have the knowledge that it takes in order to understand something, and that's the way they want us to be. They want us to be ignorant. Why? You didn't know any better. So whenever something does happen, we're going to tell you you didn't know any better, and that's why you allowed this to happen. Once again, how can you hold somebody accountable for something they did not know and just say, no, you should have known. You should have known better. We tried to tell you, but you didn't know. You didn't go to our public hearing that was held at the golf course. So that's your fault. Why? Because you didn't go to the courthouse within the span of 2 weeks that this notice was posted telling you that there was a public hearing.
What would you say to people who are watching this, or maybe not watching it, but what would you say to people who are thinking, this isn't going to affect me, that's not my community? Why is this important to people really everywhere?
So once again, if we go back to the 2050 proposed draft on what they're proposing, remember, it's a proposal. Proposals change all the time, and that's just they're wanting you to know where there might be some pipelines. Not to mention, once they have those leases in place, you signed the dotted line, you did not read the fine print, and they say, guess what? We can go on your land and build more pipeline as much as we want now. Why? You're getting your hush money. Here you go. Take it, be gone with it. What I tell people, once again, do your research. Knowledge is power. The more you can understand it, the more you understand what we're facing, the more you understand what can happen, the better you'll understand exactly what we're trying to combat here. And once again, as I stated before, people don't think this is going to affect them. Look at the proposed guideline. Look at where they're proposing on putting these pipelines, where they're proposing on putting them, and you will understand that it's coming soon. It's not a matter of if, once again, it's a matter of when they decide. And people think, it's 50 years from now, 25 years from now, it's 2050. It's not going to affect me. No, it will not, but it will affect your descendants. It will affect their descendants. It's going to affect, this is going to have a long-lasting generational effect. I would say that will be presenting itself generations from now, when your kids' kids, and then before you know it, guess what? You have a catastrophic event in your area. Your generation lives there. Your generation is gone with the wind because of this catastrophic, event. Then what? There goes your there goes your descendants. There goes your name. There goes one thing I can say, and about the indigenous people, and not only that, anybody cares about their last name. They care about their name. They care about their generations. They care about their name being passed down by generation to generation. Talking about my great grandfather did this, your great 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 grandfather was known for that. Guess what? What are you going to do when your generation dies out in this catastrophic event? So Once again, everybody from what we see in the 2050 proposed map, everybody sooner or later will be affected by it. And once again, this is just starting right now. It's starting in the state of Louisiana. And then from there, all it will expand. You know,
Starting in the state of Louisiana for US. Sorry, because whenever you say that, it makes my skin crawl because it's not just the US. Yep, the state of Louisiana is a guinea pig. There has been others sprinkled here and there amongst the US, but you've got Alberta, you've got Australia already on the map. So there's a bigger agenda. You keep saying, you're using 2050 agenda. There's a bigger agenda. And that's why I think it's important that every resident, Indigenous or non-Indigenous, comes forward and demand some answers, demand the officials to have to do their job and talk with us and explain what this project is, what the outcome is supposed to be, and how this project was even put into place without ever even having any data to show us what we could be facing overall. I mean, I'm appalled. Indigenous communities are all about making sure that we leave the earth in a better way than we came here to it. And I don't see that that is happening in this instance right now. We're going to wind up losing all of Sportsman's Paradise. If you look at that boot and you look at all the blue that is marked in on that boot where they're planning on putting, and I say boot, the state of Louisiana is a boot. Everybody in the state of Louisiana calls it the boot. If you look at it, the bottom line is they're planning on pushing it down towards the lower sea level, and that's going to affect us all eventually, and those pipes are going to connect, and then it's going to wind up going into Canada, Australia, Germany, you name it, the UK. So I think not just non-Indigenous people need to really, I think the non-Indigenous community needs to come together, and here we go again with the Hopi prophecy, the eagle and the condor. We've got to rise together to be able to get where we're going, to stand up against, dare I say, tyranny. Okay, guys, it's a bigger issue than just our state.
And you did mention there was a meeting at a golf course. What are the next steps? What's happening next? Just immediately, just give us sort of the status. Where are we at?
That's another reason why we're here. Sorry, that's another reason why we're here. They were supposed to hold a meeting November 7th at that golf course, but they canceled it, and they've yet to reschedule it.
Oh.
So the cease and desist went out after that canceled meeting from the International Indigenous Children and Family Services. Moving forward, we're still waiting to hear from the officials. When do you plan on talking to us? When are you going to start answering our questions now? My understanding is Mr. Brendan DeBrock, who is affluent inside of the state of Louisiana, up and coming politician in my eyes, and part of the Acata tribe. He has taken initiative in this and has taken it to the LSU Agricultural Board as well, into Baton Rouge last Friday to discuss it with the politicians, to start trying to get some answers. I haven't heard back from him yet, but there is the hopes that we can hopefully come to terms and get some of these politicians to start answering some of our questions, of which, again, that's going to come from the community stepping up, the residents stepping up and demanding some answers. Again, they work for us. They're supposed to work for we the people. And so we have questions, and I would like some answers before anything is allowed to move forward in the first quarter of 2025.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and we've kind of, highlighted the main points on this issue tonight. But I'll throw it out to the floor for some final thoughts, and to make sure that we have covered everything. Is there anything else you guys would like to add, or just to wrap up tonight?
Hope I'll let you go first. If you have any comments.
Just to wrap up, we urge, as Miko was saying, all the people, not only residents of Louisiana, but all the people across the nation, across the world, whoever's watching this podcast, we urge you to allow your voice to be heard, because that is the only way we're going to be able to stop this until we receive further answers. Once again, we're not talking about just, a state lives. We're talking about entire cultures, entire heritage. We're talking about Indigenous people. We're talking about all people that will be affected by this. And once again, whenever you whenever you walk in silence and nobody can see you, nobody can hear you. So we urge all the people to join us, in this, to be able to stop this until we can get further answers on what it is, how it's going to affect us, and why they did this, without informing anybody. And with that, I yield to Miko.
Thank you, Hope. I again appreciate all of your efforts in this. Thank you very much, sir, in looking into it, researching it. I will state to anyone and everyone that is watching this podcast, if you want to come on board, you want to help us research, you want to even hold a Zoom, the International Indigenous Children and Family Services is open to hosting a Zoom, a one-on-one call. It doesn't matter. Let's figure this out. We've got to come together as a community, as multicultural people, to figure out exactly what we're looking at risk-wise. And that means we all stand united, period. I don't care, Indigenous, non-Indigenous. The residents of Vernon Parish need to speak up now, because it is encroaching upon the 2025. And I find it very appalling that we are now only being notified of this in a small little article from the Leesville Daily Leader that this was happening. Unacceptable. Again, they work for us and they need to answer our questions. And so I will answer questions to anybody. I will help the International Indigenous Children and Family Services hold any Zoom meetings that we can. Any chiefs that want to speak to us, please reach out. And with that, I yield to Chief Wiggins. Anyone in your community as well, we're here to assist you. I'm also here to assist anyone else that needs any answering to this. And the next steps, they're unknown, but we can put together the next step to make sure that our voices are heard. And I yield to you, Chief Wiggins.
Yes, I sure appreciate having me here and allow me to discuss and put my input on this subject. I'd just like to say to everyone, the people that may be watching this, please all stand together. It's your children, our children. If we don't stand and stop this now, it's going to be like out of control. It's going to be way out of control. I don't see nothing positive of this. I don't understand why they couldn't model our coastal lines and put this in the Mojave Desert. Sounds a lot more sensible. But we will fight against this until they will come to the table. But I don't see nothing good. I don't see them coming to the table. They treat us like ghosts. They evade us. But they will have to face us one day. And I will stand against this for everybody, all mankind.
Well, folks, thank you very much for highlighting this issue tonight. I know that we've been talking about this in many respects in a local context for your communities in Louisiana, but obviously this is something that's going to affect everyone across the United States, right up here into Canada, and I think even people around the world as this technology is rolled out and put to use in the name of saving the environment and mitigating climate change. But it's pretty clear from the conversation we've had tonight that there are substantial risks in play here, and I appreciate you guys highlighting those risks and alerting us to what you're doing in your community, because I think you're setting a template and giving us an idea of what is coming, and it's just around the corner for all of us. Folks, I have more news of the day on the other side of the transition I'm about to run, and we're going to rerun as well Pastor Artur Pawlowski's interview, which only went out to some platforms last night. So with that, I will again thank all of you for joining me on the program tonight, and I will be back on the other side to continue the broadcast after this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I am back, and just a reminder again, you can go to their website at iicfs.org to find that petition, sign it if you wish after reading it, and lend your support to their cause if you are so inclined. A lot of other news going on today, which I will touch on, but we had a sort of a glitchy thing happen last night during our broadcast, where our feature interview with Pastor Artur Pawlowski, who became world famous when he refused to shut down his church in Calgary, Alberta. He has a new book out. We did a feature interview with him last night, but it didn't go out everywhere. So I'm going to rerun that again tonight at the end of this broadcast for those of you who want to stick around. Now, what else can I tell you in terms of the daily news? Well, I can tell you that Donald Trump has appointed, or is about to appoint, I guess, some prominent political figures to his administration. Most notably, I'm sure that most of you are aware now, it looks like Marco Rubio will be the Secretary of State. I think some people on the conservative side are probably applauding that, because of Rubio's stance on foreign policy, in particular with regard to his position on what's going on in Gaza and his position vis-a-vis Israel, Palestine. And also he's been, I would say, sort of a middle of the road on Ukraine, not completely rejecting the idea of suspending aid or financial support for Ukraine, but also not being all in on the idea that the United States should just write a blank check. So he's not on that side either. He is sort of, as I say, straddling the fence on that issue, so it will be interesting to see how all of that plays out. There was also that phone call that allegedly took place, reported by, I believe, the Washington Post, a phone call that was supposed to have taken place between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Now, it seems the Kremlin has come out and they're denying the phone call ever took place. And we were told from this Washington Post newspaper report that the conversation focused on the Trump side on warning Putin that the United States, or reminding Putin that the United States has substantial military assets in Europe, in sort of a saber-rattling moment to sort of open what might be the first round of negotiations toward ending the conflict in Ukraine. But now we're hearing on the other side that, no, it never happened. It didn't really happen at all. I don't know. I'm inclined to think that probably something did take place. It looks like there is some sort of coded communication going on between the Kremlin and the White House to be, I should say. Kind of an unusual situation, and an unusual way to sort of open peace talks, such as they are. Donald Trump, of course, promising that he was going to end that war very quickly, maybe even before he actually takes the position of president again and walks into the Oval Office. The other interesting developments out of all that, I took note that Putin it sort of gave congratulations eventually to Donald Trump for winning the election, but it was delayed. And if you went down the list of all the countries that now make up what they call the axis of resistance, led primarily by Russia and China, but the axis of resistance nations, and if you will, even the BRICS nations, all these other countries, the leaders sent congratulations very quickly to Donald Trump on winning the election. That's actually an important exercise, because when the leader of another country sends congratulatory messages, it's more than just a congratulations. It's an acknowledgement of the legitimacy of that person's election. It's an acknowledgement of the legitimacy of the sovereignty even of that country. It's an acknowledgement that, yes, we still recognize you as a sovereign state and a sovereign head of state. So it is a very important thing. But it was very interesting to see that Putin was the very last of all the leaders from the axis of resistance nations or even the BRICS nations to finally send a congratulatory message to Donald Trump. You can read into that whatever you want. I personally, I read into that sort of a power play. I think that Trump is probably very aware that Russia was hoping that he would win. I think that's the general consensus out there as well, is that the Kremlin has been hopeful that a Donald Trump presidency will benefit Russia because he will pull support, U.S. support, for Ukraine in terms of military arms and financial support to buy weapons. Very interesting scenario. Just the power dynamics in play there. You have two big world leaders now, with one, I think, sending a message to the other. Putin sending a message to Trump that, oh, you think you're the big man over there? I don't necessarily think so. I'm very much the bigger of us. I'm going to wait until the very end. And then, yeah, now I'll acknowledge you. There were news stories being done. There was a lot of media attention on the fact that Putin initially didn't congratulate Donald Trump. I mentioned it here on this program. And this is posturing. This is sending a message to Donald Trump. Now, I don't know exactly what that message is. I'm sure Donald Trump does, though. And then for a phone call that allegedly didn't take place, with the Kremlin saying, oh, no, there was never any phone call, it seems like the Russians, the Kremlin, they've been pretty active on the PR front in response to that alleged phone call. And what's been going on in the public relations propaganda sphere of activity, even the information warfare front, it's very interesting to see what's going on. As we lead up to Trump going back into the Oval Office, this is, again, I think, posturing. But if you and what I'm referring to is what Russia 1 did. They ran a report. Maybe I can find it for you here. Russia 1. Here it is right here. I've got it. They had a program on right after the story about Trump supposedly speaking to Putin. And they ran this. Now, this, of course, is Russian state media. And on this program here, they were talking about Donald Trump's wife, the future, again, First Lady Melania Trump. And what did they do? They decided to pull out all those old nude photos of Melania and run them on Russian state television. And I think in an effort to upset Donald Trump, to embarrass him, That's what most people are interpreting that as. And so while Donald Trump has been promising to end the war in Ukraine extremely quickly, maybe even before he takes office again, it's pretty clear, I think, from the activity that has taken place just in the last couple of days, that I don't think it's going to be that easy. Because now he'll have to deal with things in a very realistic way. And while there is this threat, I guess, and when I say threat, I don't mean that Trump is necessarily outright issuing some sort of a threat to completely pull funding yet. But there appears to be this, a lot of people think that the Trump administration will reduce or maybe even cut off aid to Ukraine. As a result of that, we've also seen meetings taking place. We saw these meetings form in advance of people actually going to the polls. And over in Europe, it now appears that the result of these meetings that were happening over in Ukraine and in Europe is that European nations are indicating that they are prepared to step up and increase their support for Ukraine, the level of support, especially if the United States backs off. So I don't think this war is going to end as quickly as Donald Trump has promised people it is going to end. And with the appointment of Marco Rubio, I think that also sends a different message than the one that I think that people were interpreting from the campaign rhetoric that we witnessed during the election process itself. Because Marco Rubio is not Tulsi Gabbard. Marco Rubio is not RFK Jr. Marco Rubio is also not, in my view, a war hawk neocon in the way that the pro-Russian pundits out there are portraying him tonight. He's not either of those things. I think that he is, as I say, if you look at what he has said and his record on these two wars, on the issue of Ukraine, he's more on straddling the fence. Supportive of Ukraine, but not necessarily all in on writing a blank check. So time will tell. Very interesting scenario playing out here. And this also illustrates, I mean, there are many things here that really prove that the narrative that's been spun up is not really accurate, at least the narrative about the United States completely controlling Zelensky, that Zelensky being just a puppet of the United States, that the United States is just using Ukraine for regime change in Russia. And what do I mean by this? The actions that we've seen, particularly on the US and Ukrainian and European side, have shown that these assertions have really not borne out. Case in point, Zelensky is already telegraphing, while he said very complimentary things about Donald Trump, it's becoming increasingly clear that just because Donald Trump tells Zelensky that he wants this war to end and he wants Ukraine to maybe give up, it won't necessarily be acceptable to Zelensky. And he doesn't have to rely on Donald Trump's support entirely, or the support of the U.S. in the end, in order to maintain the war, because the U.S. isn't and won't be the only means of support for the effort to preserve Ukrainian sovereignty in the face of Russia being inside Ukrainian borders. And I don't think Putin is either in a position right now where he feels that he needs to give up. And you're also seeing this massive buildup of troops inside the Russian area that the Ukrainians are now occupying. And what is Russia doing to try to take back that territory? They've brought in about 10,000 North Korean troops, which also does not support the narrative that we've been getting from the pro-Russian pundits, which indicates, which we've been told, that Russia is always going to win. It's going to be over within a week, or in 3 days or 2 weeks from now. And none of that has ever borne out. It hasn't played out at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And now it appears that all indications are that for some time, just like the Ukrainians, the Russians are having some difficulty maintaining their manpower. They have some manpower issues because who wants to go fight in a war and run into the meat grinder? I don't think too many people really want to do that. And you're seeing that even over in Russia, some people are trying to avoid the military service because it's obviously life-threatening. So North Korea has sent those troops. So now you have Russia trying to take back the Kursk region. Ukrainian troops dug in pretty tight. It looks like they're determined to stay there for the long haul. Russia bringing in enough troops. I think the troop ratio is only in around 2 to just maybe a little over 2 to 1, which, according to military strategists, that's not really quite enough to mount a serious. Well, I shouldn't say a serious, but generally speaking, you need about 3 to 1 odds if you're on the offense. And they don't really have enough manpower quite there to do that. It looks like Ukraine is still in a position to fairly effectively defend that area that they've taken over. And the thing that was supposedly said in that phone conversation between Trump and Putin is that Trump also told Putin not to escalate in the Kursk region. Now, is that true? Kremlin denies the conversation ever took place, and I'm not really hearing anything from the Trump side. At least I haven't seen it yet, me personally, anything from Trump indicating one way or the other where we stand on all of that. But as Trump allegedly said this to Putin, we're seeing those troops already engaging in combat with Ukrainian troops in the Kursk area. And it's a sizable area. Strategically, it isn't even so much about the strategic value of it. It's the negotiating chip that the Kursk region represents. That's why they need to hold on to it. And Trump knows that too. Short time before he's actually able to take office, and he's in the process of getting ready to transition. The process of transition is already in place. It's already playing out. And we're seeing... Did I show you this? I did show you that, right? Yeah. I won't run this because they actually do have nude pictures of Melania on here, and I don't think we want to show them. But you can sort of see some of it in the background there as well on the video screens behind the two hosts. So it's interesting how this very unusual peace negotiation is beginning. Trump's not going to have an easy time of this. I don't think that it's going to go down quite the way he had been telling people that it's going to go down. It's to suggest that Trump holds all the cards. And this is the thing that I've been sort of trying to convey to people here on this channel for at least a month and a half, 2 months. Longer maybe, is that people think that this is all the United States doing, that the U.S. just can start or stop this war at will, that somehow people have it in their heads, that some people anyway, that the United States started this war. The United States didn't invade anybody. And in fact, this is the other thing, is that the NATO countries supplying arms to Ukraine have actually shown an incredible amount of restraint. Because with the weapons that they've given Ukraine, they've come with severe restrictions. They don't want those weapons used inside Russian territory, a lot of them. So the ATACMS missiles, the missiles that the UK is being asked for, they're being told you can't strike targets inside Russia with these. Why? Because the Biden administration, and especially Germany, they're afraid. They're afraid of Russia. They're afraid of Putin's nuclear rhetoric, the saber rattling that he's been engaged in. Don't you do this or we're going to nuke you. How many times has Vladimir Putin threatened to use nuclear weapons? Several. Come right out and said it. And that's something that the Biden administration is very, very afraid of. Biden has been afraid of Putin. Putin knows it. I think that is also why what the United States has been, doesn't matter what's been going on, Putin doesn't care, because he knows that the U.S. is afraid they're not going to go too far. That's also why the incursion into the Kursk area by Ukrainian forces, I think, took the Russians completely off guard. They didn't think that they had the you-know-whats to do it. They didn't see it coming. They thought this war, Putin thought this war, special military operation, which is actually a war, would just be fought within the borders of Ukraine itself. Not that Russia recognizes the border of Ukraine anymore, not under Putin. But that's not the way it's played out. Instead, Putin saying that he's been afraid of NATO threat. NATO has shown that they don't really want to fight with Russia. They've illustrated that. It's plain to see. They won't use the weapons. They're too afraid. This is not a full-blown NATO assault on Russia. This is quite the opposite. It's like, you can fight, but we're only going to give you enough to kind of defend yourself, not too much. We're afraid of what Putin's going to do. We can't really escalate to this point, can't escalate to that point. We're afraid of giving you this. The United States, under Biden, has been so timid, so weak, actually, that it's only as of today that military contractors are being allowed to go into Ukraine. And these military contractors, when I say military contractors, we're talking about companies that provide arms, produce arms, to maintain some of the equipment, help maintain some of the equipment that the U.S., that comes from the U.S. side. So support personnel, private contractors to go in and perform maintenance, say, on the F-16 jets or some of the armored vehicles that they send over there, things of that nature, or some of the more sophisticated weapon systems that need maintenance, that really the Ukrainians have had difficulty maintaining and continuing to use because they haven't had the expertise, the qualified personnel to maintain the equipment. Now, as of today, companies are allowed to send, the U.S. is allowing those contractors to go in there. It appears to be sort of a shift, maybe, in the approach from the U.S. as we begin to see the transition take place from the Biden administration to the new Trump administration coming in, which might end up being a peace through strength approach, a more aggressive approach, while people, I think, in the RFK Jr. camp who decided to come over and support Trump during the election have been thinking sort of the opposite, where it's like, oh, we're just going to pull the aid and tell Zelensky to give up, and too bad for Ukraine, and just let Putin have the country. But Trump has said that Ukrainian sovereignty is important. So how is it going to play out? I don't know. This might still play out where Trump just decides to just to yank the funding. Maybe the EU won't follow through and provide the support, and maybe Ukraine just collapses and Putin takes the whole thing because the support falls apart. That could happen too. It could end up being a complete disaster for Ukraine in that way. I don't know, but I don't think that's likely to happen, because what we're also seeing is what we've laid out on this program through various interviews, through Mike Bacharach and others who have told us, shown us that the Ukrainians are building up their own arms production industry within the country itself, and then bringing the components into Ukraine so that they can assemble and manufacture drones and even their own missiles within Ukraine. So I don't think this is over. As much as Donald Trump has told us he'll end this thing on day one, or maybe even before he gets into power again, I don't think it's going to play out quite that way. And it shows that Trump and the United States do not dictate to Vladimir Zelensky. Obviously, he has sway, as all the European countries do, because they are providing support, all of them. So collectively, they all have support over, or sway over, what Zelensky and Ukraine are able to do. But not solely the United States. It's just not that simple. It's much more complex. Regardless of the side that or your views on this, the truth of the matter is it's a much more complex scenario than a black and white assessment. Much more complex. So we got to keep our eye on it, and we're certainly going to do that. What else is going on? Oh, there's this guy in Kanakistan up here in Canada who is in a dispute with his landlord. See if I can find this for you. What's the dispute over? His electric vehicle. Is it here? Let me see if I can find it. The dispute is that he is plugging his electric vehicle in here. Here it is right here. Is it a tenant's right to charge an EV at their rental? This is in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada's capital. I'll show you the headline. It's, I think this might end up affecting people who rent their abodes across the country. You're going to see changes in leases for people, I'm sure of this, because this guy's saying that he should be allowed to plug in his electric vehicle and charge it at no extra charge, because in his lease it says that electricity from his apartment is included in his rent. The landlord disagrees. And as you see, this is boiling over. So I don't know exactly what this would end up costing overall the landlord if he has to foot the bill for the electricity. In this article, it's indicating it could be somewhere between $25 and $80 a month. And I would suggest to you that that is nowhere near accurate. And I can tell you that from my personal experience, test driving electric vehicles, the cost of charging them is substantially higher than that if you're driving at any real distances at all. A little bit more than $25 to $80 a month. More than that. Unless you're not, I guess it depends on how much you drive. But hey, it could potentially cost that landlord a lot. Interesting dispute. Oh, the times they are changing. Now, also, we have the body of a cryptocurrency influencer has been recovered by police in Montreal. Here's a picture of him. I'm telling you, the world of cryptocurrency seems to be pretty hazardous, especially for some of the top influencers out there. We've seen this other guy, this crypto king. Remember, he was kidnapped or suffered a home invasion and was beaten severely and ended up on social media because he was basically running a crypto scam and owed and took a lot of money from people and then ended up being beaten. Now this guy, his body was recovered by Montreal police, as I say. And his name is Kevin Mershahai, a cryptocurrency influencer. Provincial police in Quebec not releasing a lot of information on this investigation at this point. But the body was found by a passerby in a nature park on October 30th. And now it has been positively identified by the authorities as this social media influencer. A woman has been arrested. Joni LePage, 32 years old. She's facing charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. And according to the warrant for her arrest, police are saying that they believe Murshahai was killed on the day of the kidnapping, that dating all the way back to June 21st. So this investigation taking a long time to unfold, the evidence taking a long time to analyze, and even the identification of the body not being confirmed now until now. So LePage has been arraigned in court, but her next court date is scheduled for December 4th. A gruesome tale. And I do find it interesting that we're getting these kinds of cases. This is not the only one surrounding people who get sort of involved in cryptocurrency schemes of different kinds. And it will be interesting to see what comes out in court. What was this guy involved with? What was she involved with? Because we're talking about money. Maybe big money. I don't know. Oh, back to the Trump file. Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor, looks like he's going to be named U.S. ambassador to Israel. So if this actually happens, he will be the first non-Jewish person to hold that role since 2011. And, of course, he'll be thrown right into the fire because we're dealing, of course, with this whole big conflict in Gaza. And it seems like the tensions there continue to rise. And peace negotiations between Israel and Hamas falling apart. Qatar was involved in mediation efforts. Didn't result in anything substantial. Hostages still being held by Hamas. The conflict continues to rage. Anybody picking up that portfolio, ambassador to Israel, that's going to be a tough gig. But Mike Huckabee, super nice fella. At least that's the way he comes across. Haven't met him in person, but he seems to just be so personable. Maybe he's the guy for the job. Maybe he is. I remember when he ran against Trump back in, what was it, 2015, when he wanted the nomination for the Republican Party to initially run. And then he came out and ended up being a strong Trump supporter in the end. So yeah, lots of developments there. Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking Tulsi Gabbard would be chosen as Secretary of State, but nope, did not quite end up that way. Oh, and Kristi Noem, too. Looks like she might get a substantial position within the Trump administration. Probably, it appears here, as Homeland Security Secretary. Some people thought she might make a great running mate for Trump and a great VP. And then, of course, the opponents, the people who are never happy with anything that Trump does, they're hammering on all of these appointments, pointing out that Kristi Noem killed her own dog. And, there were reasons for that she explained. The opponents to the Trump administration largely coming out against Marco Rubio, saying that he's a war hawk and a neocon. And then the criticism as well. What else are we getting out of that? Oh, yeah, that we've all been fooled by a con man because Trump is really just a puppet for the Zionists. So, make your own assessment. I'll say this again. What's going on in Ukraine, that's not going to be solved as easily as Trump led people to believe. Maybe could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't think so. I think he's in for a pretty rough ride. And I don't think it's going to play out at all the way that he thinks. I think he's in for a rude awakening, and I think Putin has already signaled that to him. I think that, he sent a message to Trump that he wants to be the top dog. And I don't know how that's going to play, man, because Trump's got a big ego, too. Now, I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding, how tough Trump really is on this portfolio. I think Biden, in many respects, has shown weakness on many fronts, and that's partly why Russia did what Russia did. Will Trump be strong enough? I'll tell you this. If people were worried, though, that Trump is a Putin puppet, I don't know about that now, because I've been watching carefully to see who he ends up putting in these positions. And Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, these are not doves. These are also not straight up war hawks. These are conservatives so far. And while Trump pushed aside Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, indicating that neither one will be in his administration, those are more on the war hawk side. These other people, not as neocon-y. For lack of a better word, they're not as war hawkish. So I think you're getting a tempered response, a tempered administration forming with Donald Trump. So again, it's just very, very interesting stuff. How will people end up reacting to all of this? I don't know. It's going to depend on what side of the political fence you're on. Stay with me. When we come back, we're going to rerun our interview from last night with Pastor Artur Pawlowski. A great interview. He has a new book out, Lions Do Not Bow. Pastor Art, of course, refused to close his church at the height of the pandemic, and then became world famous when police and public health officials from the municipality showed up at his church, and he told them to get out repeatedly and kicked them out of his church. The video recorded of that incident went viral, and now he has a new book out that's also a #1 bestseller in its category already. And if you missed the interview last night, now's your chance to pick it up here this evening. Sorry about the technical problems last evening. And if you watched it last night, it's worth watching again, because there are little nuggets in there that you probably missed. And if you pay close enough attention, it's going to be well worth the review. Stay with me. Pastor Artur Pawlowski, right after this.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media publishing things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network, World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. A special broadcast tonight. We're privileged and excited to welcome back Pastor Artur Pawlowski to the program. He has a new book out, and he's here to tell us all about it. It's his story, front to back, top to bottom, bumper to bumper, as I often say. He's going to share his experiences fighting for freedom and tell us what it was like while he was behind bars. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring in our guest for tonight, Pastor Artur Pawlowski. It is a privilege to have you back on the program, sir. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back on your show, Rick.
Yeah, it's an exciting day because this is the first day that, of the release of your new book. Tell us what the title of the book is.
Well, it's more than just a book. Today is the Remembrance Day.
Yes.
And I'm super excited that this book is actually being released out of all the days in the year. Somehow, I asked my publishers, why have you picked 11th of November? Do you know what is this day? And she kind of forgot, sometimes people just busy.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, no, it's just mathematics. They have this, process of releasing the book, the pre-order and this and that. And then mathematically just fall on 11th of November. Remembrance Day for United States of America is the Veterans Day, and for the Polish people. As you can see, there is a Polish flag right here. For the Polish people is the Independence Day. Out of all the days, Poland disappears from the map of the world for 123 years. And because of our great grandparents that were willing to pay the ultimate price and fight and were enslaved and tortured. My grandfather was sent to Siberia for opposing the Tsar and for opposing the Soviets. And it was this day that God has chosen to release this book, which is all about standing and fighting for freedom. Lions do not bow. It's not just a story of Artur Pawlowski and look what the horrible things they have done to this man and to this family. Remember, they lit my house on fire. They wanted to burn me alive with my children sleeping. They lit our church on fire. They burned down our children's bus. They broke into our church. They robbed us. They stole equipment, speakers, cameras, multiple times. They destroyed our church, vandalized for 3 months. They wanted to murder me in prison. As you remember, 5 different inmates testified to our lawyers that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me in prison. Also, they kept me in solitary confinement, metal cages, concrete cells, max spot for the most dangerous terrorists in the land, freezing conditions, and then psych ward, house arrest for a year and a half. They unscrewed tire in my pickup truck. I was physically attacked, knives, guns, punched in the face. All kinds of things happened to us, but the story is not about, look, poor me, what they have done to me. This is the story of courage. You got to remember, for the past 4 years, they blanketed this whole earth with the messages of fear, terrorizing everyone. This book is a message of boldness and courage, a roar, if you will, that look what they have done to this little pastor, a Polish immigrant that grew up in hell behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. They unleashed hell on him, and yet look at me. I'm still standing. I'm still fighting. I have never bowed. And that's what this whole book is all about. It tells you about political fixers. It tells you about attempted bribery by the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, and her cabinet ministers. It tells you about what happened in prison day by day. It tells you that the little guy, with the help of a powerful God, can withstand the most wicked, evil, corrupted powers in the country. And the story is not, look what they have done to this man. No. Look what God has done to this man. Look, without them, there would be no book. It's 500-page documented story about what happened before and after and between every day, the background story of the Get Out video. Why lions do not bow? I'll tell you why. I'm a very privileged man. I have been around the world. I have been on different continents, and God sent me some time ago to Africa. We built orphanages and churches in Africa, Kenya, in the city of Kisumu. We have a number of churches. And when I was there, feeding the poor and doing crusades and different other things, speaking, different churches, I would always spend few days in the savannah. And it was there that God really spoke to me, because when I was there, I observed the lions, how majestic and beautiful and amazing those animals, those creatures are. I'm telling you, the moment the lions showed up, the monkeys stopped playing, the birds stopped chirping. The whole nature, I don't know, I cannot explain it to you, but it was like the whole nature, even the grass acknowledged the kings have arrived, the lionesses, the queen is here. The way they walk, the way they keep their head up, and it's like they know, and they walk with this understanding. We own this place. This is our home. We are the kings in the castle. We are the kings of the jungle. And at that time, I was privileged to observe them hunt, and how they walk and how they lay, how they behave in their natural habitat, how they deal with hyenas and all those different things. And I'm telling you, God spoke to me, and he says, I want you to be just like them. Know who your God is. Know who I am. That's the number one thing. But then know who you are. You are my son. You're a child of the living God. You are a lion. So act, behave like one. Because we can be caught, Rick, with this, poor me, look what they're doing to me. Oh, I just want to quit. I cannot handle this anymore. Enemy's too big. The giants are too powerful. Or we can act like lions Who do you think you are, you uncircumcised Philistine, that you should defy the armies of the living God, the Bible says. And seriously, who those people think they are? So I decided to speak like this during different conferences and meetings about the lions and about what God wants us to be, with an understanding that we are to be the head, not the tail. And of course, I don't know if you remember, but quite often during different meetings, I would say, we are the lions. The lions do not bow before the hyenas. We eat them for breakfast. And then we were thinking about, different names for the book and what would be, what would click the best with the people. And we always came back to the same simple message. We are lions. We don't make pacts with the hyenas. We don't make pacts with evil people. We don't negotiate with evil people. We don't bow to evil people. We are lions, and lions do not bow. That's where the whole thing came from. And of course, the book is giving you the whole story. When I do interviews like with you, and we've done it a very long one before, trying to explain to you or tell you my story, it's impossible. 1 hour, it's impossible. 2 hours, 5 hours, 1 day, it's impossible to tell the story because it's so complex. People ask me, can you share with us about your arrest? Which one, Rick? You got to be more specific. I was arrested so many times. Which one? What about, when they came to the church? They came to the church many times. You got to be more specific. Or the tickets. Can you tell us about the tickets? Which one? I received over 350 citations. Tell us about the courts. Which one? I was in over 120 court cases, and I'm still in the court as we speak right now. So the only way I could tell the story was to pen it down. And I would not be able to tell the story, Rick, if I was not in a solitary confinement. So in a weird way of events, it was thanks to those villains, thanks to those wicked, evil people like Stephen Johnston, the Crown prosecutor, that said to the judges, lied to the judges multiple times, and said, Art Pawlowski is a highly dangerous individual. You cannot release him. He has to be in isolation. He has to be locked out, this criminal. So they locked me in isolation. But it was because they locked me in isolation.
We should maybe just back up a little bit and explain how this all began, just in case there are people out there who are not familiar. You really rose to, I guess, you got a lot of public attention during the pandemic when you wouldn't shut your church down, when you refused to comply with those orders from the government, right?
Yeah, so the whole story started where the beginning, this story, the Lions Do Not Bow story, comes from the beginning of 2020. As you remember, we received a letter from the City Hall telling us that we have to stop feeding the poor. And of course, I did not understand what those people are talking about, because if we're truly, I said that to them, if we're truly in this big crisis, as you claim we are, then my services are needed now more than ever. My services are needed more than ever. I'm feeding the poor. I'm saving lives. And I said to them, if you close the shelters, if you stop soup kitchens, what do you think is going to happen to 15 to 20,000 different individuals roaming the streets of Calgary? They will turn to crime. They will break into people's houses, grocery stores, garages, cars. People need to eat. If you don't give them food, and there is no other way that they can get to food, they're going to turn to crime. Of course, no one replied. The mayor didn't reply. I sent the letter to the premier, to every minister in Alberta. No one replied to me. Instead, they sent the police officers, health inspectors, and bylaw services. And I became the first Canadian, if you remember the story, to get the COVID ticket. So I got the ticket. I was threatened. My parishioner was shoved, assaulted, and I was threatened with arrest. And I will get millions, I was told, millions of dollars worth of tickets, which later on I did get. I was charged over 50 times, if I remember correctly. During that time, I had police at every service, which is multiple times a week. And we just stood our ground. We just kept doing. We did what we believed was needed for such a time as this, which is very simple: feeding the poor and giving them messages of hope. And that was 2020. 2021, let me back a little bit. The culmination of 2020 was the famous Christmas celebration. Remember when Canadian government canceled Christmas? They told us that singing is illegal in the entire country. No one can sing. This is like never in the history of mankind. It has never happened. They said that they are canceling Christmas. They made Lord's Supper, a Holy Communion, illegal. And I was told I have to shut down the church and we cannot do anything else. I couldn't even have, according to them, a brother in my home. So what I did what Artur Pawlowski does, which I call it the head-on collision, which when I'm being told ridiculous things, that I'm not allowed to feed the poor, I'm not allowed to preach, I do the opposite. So what I did, I not only kept the church's doors open and I live streamed everything. When they told me I cannot have brother for coffee, I invited my whole family and friends to my home, and we did the biggest dinner we could fit in my home. I took pictures and I sent it to the villains and I said, come and get me. When they told us we're canceling Christmas, I went on television as well and I said, you people think you're some kind of a green Grinch? You canceling Christmas? Who do you people think you are? We just had Halloween and you were wishing kids having a great time. Now you're canceling Christmas? No, I invited people to the biggest Christmas celebration in the land. And as you remember, thousands of people showed up and we broke some kind of a record. We had over 120 police officers in uniform, 20 cops on bicycles, 54 police cars. We had anti-terrorists, SWAT team, and the chief of police, and I end up with 15 COVID tickets for that celebration. We had carolers, and I was told that because of me, the whole city is going to die. We had AAA steak. I was told that I'm a horrible monster. I was compared to Adolf Hitler. I was called Grandpa Killer, Grandma Killer, a destroyer of communities, you name it. And I end up, of course, imprisoned for that. The next day was the famous video, Get Out, Nazis. You got to remember, and I'm giving you a background story to this whole thing, why I call them Nazis, why I call them Gestapo by their proper pronouns, because they were acting for over a year. They were hunting us down already for over a year. Remember, they came to me at the beginning of 2020. Now, a year later, I'm being hunted down, tickets after tickets, harassment, intimidation, them breaking the law for over a year. And they entered our church building illegally against the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 176, 1, 2, and 3, breaking the law, demanding me to bow to some nonsense. So the only thing I had for those people was, at this, you got to remember, I already negotiated with them. I talked to them many times, and they would not listen. So the only thing I had for those people at this moment was get out. Get out. And as you remember, they would not leave for a very long time. It took me over 30 times to tell them to get out. Eventually they leave, of course, but they came back with a vengeance. They found crooked judges. And by the way, I'm telling you the whole thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly in the book, Lions Do Not Bow. I am naming the judges. I am naming the Crown Prosecutor, Stephen Johnson. By the way, he is featured in the book. He's big part of the book, because it was thanks to him and him lying to the judges. He is right here.
That's a rare photo.
That's the only photo of this guy.
Yeah.
Because he is doing everything in his power not to be seen. You see, those are hyenas. Those are monsters. And they don't want people to be able to recognize what they're doing and who they are. So the book is talking about political fixers. Here is my picture when I was imprisoned. This is the arrest in front of my house. This is the truck convoy. You've got the rallies. This is the picture from the Get Out video. This is my brother David that was organizing with my wife and my son Nathaniel and the church the longest ongoing protest in the history of prison. Every day I was on the inside, they were on the outside conducting church services. Those are some rallies that we had. This is Ohio State people that put Canada on a watch list as a nation that persecutes Christians. You've got the arrests with my brother David. So I've included a lots of things. Here is a baptism of my daughter. As you remember, when I came back from my tour in the U.S., I was arrested stepping out of the plane, and I was charged criminally for baptizing my daughter. Here is the Kutz, my sermon that the judge Gordon Krinky, that crooked judge, he said that every tracker, everyone that took part in a truck convoy is a criminal, and because I encouraged them to stand for God and state given rights, I'm a criminal as well, and I was charged and sentenced, and I was found guilty on inciting mischief, release order, and a terrorism charge, interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. A total insanity. Here's my picture from the tour with General Flynn and his wife. I was invited to speak about this in Mar-a-Lago, in Trump's house, to testify about what this crazy, wicked, evil, totalitarian government is doing in China, behind the Iron Curtain. Here are the people that fought for my life every single day. Here is the famous Christmas festival that I end up with 15 tickets. Then you've got, I had the privilege of hanging around with the Trump family. That's Eric Trump and other. Here is my son. Remember my son Nathaniel testified before the European Parliament?
Yes.
He has been detained already 5 times for this. To this day, every time he comes to Canada, because he studies in the US, every time he arrives, he is being detained by the Canadian authorities for that speech that was exposing Canadian totalitarian regime. Here is with Trump family in Florida, by press conference about exposing the conservative government. And then here is an interesting thing. That's my arrest, stepping out of the plane. But here are the pieces of paper. I wrote this book on a pieces of paper, request forms that the inmates were giving me because I was denied paper in prison, and they would give me those request forms. So I was writing my whole story, what was happening every day, the background story on a pieces of paper. And you know what happened? Canadian government confiscated my book already 3 times. That's how dangerous this book is. What I'm telling you in the book is the background story. I'm telling you about attempted briberies by the Premier of Alberta, Daniel Smith. I was offered $2 million to shut my mouth. I was offered a guaranteed seat at the legislature if I keep my mouth shut. I was offered a government job if I don't want to be a politician. I received phone calls from the fixers that if I don't keep my mouth shut, it's already decided by Stephen Harper, Jason Kenney, and Pierre Poilievre that I will be assassinated in prison. They said the judge is bought and paid for, and you're going to prison and you're not coming out. All of this is in a book, how that unfolded, the phone call with the premier. She called me. People are contacting me and say, why would you call her? No, I was not calling her. She called me, trying to fix things. They love to call themselves the fixers. Here is the document. Sometimes people say, oh, we don't believe you. So I included lots of things in a book. This is a document that states that I am considered dangerous to the staff and the facility, and I will be housed indefinitely in solitary confinement in MaxPot for the most dangerous terrorists in the country. All of that was done to me illegally, and as you know, I'm suing them. I'm suing Attorney General of Canada. I'm suing the Chief of Police, Calgary Police, Alberta Health Services, Prison, Canada Post. We're suing RCMP for what they have done to me.
Canada Post?
Yeah, because what happened, they conspired with Calgary's police when I received a registered mail to go and pick up my registered mail. It said that I am the only one that can pick it up. So when I did, they arrested me. So they were part of the conspiracy against me, because what happened was For people, you see, that's the problem. To understand the story of Artur Pawlowski, you got to read the book, because there's so many twists, so many crazy things that happen. You got to kind of follow the narration, and then you will be able to understand what they did to me. You know why we are suing them? We're not suing them for money. Money is there, but we're not suing them for money. We are alleging conspiracy to commit criminal acts against me and my family and our church. Why? Because we came to documents, we came to prove that those different government organizations came together, conspiring, working together against me to put me in prison. Canada Post was part of that. They've decided to trespass me, but they would not give me the trespass, but they said to the police I was trespassing and I was arrested. And all of that was used to deny my bail. So all those players, they did everything in their power to pile up charges against me so they can prove to the judge I am super dangerous, therefore I cannot be released on bail. That's what they did. That's how everything came together. RCMP, Canada Post, Calgary Police, Chief of Police. So for example, I was driving with my son Nathaniel and my brother David. We got stopped in the middle of the highway, and they came to my brother and they said, there is a warrant for your arrest. You're under arrest. I'm sitting there. I've done nothing. And then they realized I am with him. So they went on the phone and they said, hey, Artur Pawlowski is there too. So arrest him too. There was no charges. There was no reason for any arrest. I've done nothing wrong. And yet they use every opportunity to hurt us and to pile up nonsense charges. Of course, most of those charges were dropped, but they used them to keep me imprisoned in solitary confinement. They said to the judges, Stephen Johnston, this pathological liar, Crown prosecutor from the Special Force, from Special Crown Prosecutor's Office, he said to the judges, I am super dangerous. If I will be released, it's going to be a cataclysm. What I had to endure, listening to lie after lie after lie. I've never been charged with any violent crime. I've never been charged with any assault. I'm not dangerous. You know, I feed the poor for 25 years. I preach the gospel. You don't have to like, you may not be a religious person, but that's what I do. I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. I tell people that they have to change their ways. That's the only dangerous thing I do, according to those people. And yet I was portrayed by Stephen Johnston as this highly dangerous, very dangerous individual. So the story in The Lions Do Not Bow is kind of taking you on a journey of why and what was happening. The key players, the politicians, the key players, judges, the off-camera ex parte meetings without our knowledge or our participation, when the judges like John Rook the Crook, I call him, or Adam Germain, or Gordon Krinky, or David Gates, they were giving the police officers powers to hurt us without our ability to defend ourselves. That's the whole point. This was a conspiracy to hurt us without our ability to be able to counterattack this. The judges had meetings with the police and the politicians behind the closed doors. Later, we've learned that those meetings were not recorded, and there is no record of the meetings anymore. The records were erased. This is like dealing with the biggest mafia that there is in the country, and the police officers were acting like muscle, like gangsters for the mafia. So I'm exposing them. I'm simply telling the story. I'll tell you why. First of all, because there was nothing else to do in solitary confinement, so I was just writing. I kept writing. It kept me sane. It kept me hopeful that at least one day the people will know what happened to me. But also, I believe that the people deserve to know who did what and why it was done. People deserve to know how crooked our justice system is, how corrupted our political realm is, how manipulative, deceptive propaganda mainstream news is. And all of that is in the book. And of course, there are good stories. There's a lots of mini sermons. You will learn day by day in a mini diary, if you will. I would pen every single day what was happening to me. There were political statements I was doing. There were also interactions with the inmates and the guards. And, all those things that when I was being taken from my solitary cell to a concrete cell, the inmates were banging on the door, yelling, "Free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art." And they were telling the guards, if anything happens to this man, even if one hair will fall from his head, watch your back. So I had enormous support outside of prison and inside prison from the inmates. It was incredible to see that. That's why 21 days later, if you remember the story, 21 days in isolation, the inmates, it was their idea. They sent a petition to the director, Fader, and they demanded that if I'm not released, if he will not release me from isolation, then he's going to have a riot. And the next day I was released. I could conduct church services and Bible studies with the inmates and hang around with them. It's a crazy story. Sometimes when I shared today with the reporter about metal cages, and I'm sharing what happened to me. And I'm listening to my own words and I'm thinking, like, I still don't believe that this happened in Canada. Like sometimes you detach yourself from your own story because it's so crazy.
Yes.
But it happened to me, and it's just so well documented. You got to remember, if people are really interested, go to streetchange.ca, legal fight, and you will be able to read the entire allegation. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's Hollywood production. That's how crazy. And Rick, I don't understand why they did this to me. You don't do this to a man that has such a big mouth like me. If they would keep me with inmates, there would be no big story. If they would just leave me alone, there would be no story. But they did those crazy things like kidnapping me. Are you serious? And you thought that if you're going to kidnap me, I'm not going to talk about this? A premier phones me and you think I'm not going to tell the whole world how corrupted you are? Fixers are calling me, threatening my life, that they're going to assassinate me, and you think I'm going to get scared and not tell the whole world how crooked the politicians are? I don't know what they were thinking, but I guess God has given me a book, which is straight from Hollywood movie script. It's absolutely insane.
So tell me more about being in solitary confinement. You say you were writing while you were in solitary. So how did you do that? Was that just like with a pen and a piece of paper, or did they give you access to a computer, or like how do you even do something like that in solitary? And what was the experience like?
It's solitary confinement for a man like me. You see, I am a people's man, if you will. I always hang around with people. Even when I do tours and I speak, I always hang around with people. Or I am not your celebrity that comes only, delivers a message and disappears. I always hang around. I sit with the people. I chat with the people. I love people. So when they locked me in solitary confinement, this was a real torture. 26 hours straight. Half an hour for washroom, for shower and phone call. And then you're back in a cage. It's nuts. And the first week was the worst. They would not give me my reading glasses. They would confiscate my write-ups. They confiscated my Bibles. So you're sitting in a very small, confined place, nothing to do, no TV, nothing. You're just sitting there, and I'm telling you, without the gadgets, you see, right now, if I'm bored, I can watch your show. I can, Google stuff. I can read something. I can play games. So I can watch a movie. Over there was nothing, zero, nada. Sitting there was a torture, was crazy, was driving me nuts. So what I decided to do, I said, if this is my future, and you got to remember, Stephen Johnston already declared that he's going to keep me in isolation for 2 years minimum. So you got to keep this in the back of your mind, that I was getting ready to spend 2 years in this horror movie, because I cannot describe this in any other way. It was a horror movie. So I to keep my mind of, for not going crazy, I decided, okay, fine. If this is my reality now, and there is nothing I can do about this, so at least I'm going to do my best to narrate the story, our ride, about why this happened to me, all the things that led to this moment in my life. So that's where the idea came from, because I had nothing else to do. So I asked, because inmates were coming through the door to me, and we were chatting, and they learned I'm the pastor. Of course, everyone knew me. When they recognized me, they said, "You're that pastor." They all cheer for me. They got newspapers there, so I was all over the news. And they were coming to me one after another. They were bringing me coffee. They were bringing me a cream for coffee. They were bringing me hot water, because another thing I learned in prison is that you can actually give in a solitary confinement, you can receive hot water through the door, through the crack of the door. They know how to do this thing that the water sips into your cup. It's crazy. I never knew you can even do stuff like this, but you learn as you go. And then I asked them, will you bring me any paper so I can write? And they did. They brought me the order forms, the forms that you write in prison if you get complaint, or if you need something, you got the request forms. So I wrote my book, big part of the book, on the request forms. So what I simply did, I said, okay, how this whole craziness started? Well, it started at the beginning of 2020, when those officers declared that feeding the poor is prohibited by law. So I simply wrote that story, the police, the information that was given to me, my replies, all that background. Then what happened after? What happened during the Christmas festival? What happened during or before the Get Out video? Why I call them Nazis? Why I call them, in my opinion, by the proper pronouns, Gestapo, which is simply means political police, which I'm explaining in the book. I'm giving a little bit of history. I'm talking about show trials, what that meant when I grew up behind the Iron Curtain, what Gestapo means, why freedom is so important to me, why you Canadians, Americans, should listen to Polish immigrants and other immigrants that came from other countries, because we lived in hell. And the hell is already here. That's why we're so vocal. That's why we are flipping the tables and saying, you don't want this. Trust us. We escaped that.
And can you elaborate a little bit on that to give us a little more background about where you came from, what it was like living behind the Iron Curtain, your experience with that?
Well, it's Rick, it's hell. Communism, socialism, actually fascism, any ism, globalism, humanism, all those different things is hell, because it has one primary focus, or point, is control. What they're doing, they are creating a scenario where your life is completely controlled by them. In other words, communism, socialism, fascism, all those isms is the wannabe pharaohs that are the elites, rulers, and then you, slaves. When the pharaoh speaks, it's like God has just spoken. It becomes the law. And we witnessed that in the past 4 years. Look, Fauci comes on television, he mumbles something because he was a pathological liar. I called him Pinocchio, because in the morning he would say one thing, in the evening he would change his story. And I said, don't you see it? The guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But he is demanding that somehow he's the expert. But what's incredible about the story is that whatever he said automatically somehow became the law. When our health inspector, the chief health inspector, said something, automatically somehow it became the law. 6 feet apart, you cannot have a coffee, you cannot go here, this right. Craziness, right? There was not a law. Nowhere during this time they made this as a law. It was mandates, it was recommendations, but it never a law. So they were in fact the lawbreakers. So growing up behind the Iron Curtain is lawlessness, just like we observed in the past few years. Is show trials. What is a show trial? A show trial is when an individual is already condemned convicted before even trial starts. It's all a show. It's all propaganda. It's all sending a message. Why do you think, Rick, my arrests were so crazy and widely publicized and videotaped and done in such a spectacular way?
Oh, they were trying to send a message to everybody else. Don't you dare try this.
That's exactly the purpose. There was never a need to come with 120 officers to arrest Artur Pawlowski. There was no need to block my entire street for all the neighbors to see that there is this great takedown of El Chapo of Calgary, Al Capone of Canada. There was no need for the detectives. There was no need for the SWAT team and anti-terrorists. There was no need for all this massive amount of armed officers to take me down. The only thing they needed to do every single time was to send a message to my lawyers saying, there is a warrant for your client's arrest. Can you arrange for him to turn himself in? That's it. That's the only drama you would ever see. Artur Pawlowski in front of the police station doing a selfie or a little chit-chat to my supporters. I have to go in. There is a warrant for my arrest, and I'm going there with my lawyers, and I hope to see you when I get out, and we will deal with the legalities of this arrest. That's it. No drama in the middle of the highway. No torture. No transporting me to prison upside down like a piece of meat. There was no need to drag me in the middle of the snow, arresting my son, arresting my brother, arresting my associate pastor, arresting multiple people from our church. There was no need for that. They did it for propaganda purposes. So growing up behind the Iron Curtain, you're lacking everything. Your entire life is chasing after necessities of life. You're constantly looking for the next meal. The government is controlling everything. What you eat, how much sausage amount you can buy, how many kilos of sugar you can get a month, how much gasoline you can put in your car, where you work, with whom you're working, the entertainment, movies, what kind of movies you can watch, how many minutes of cartoons. I can go on and on and on. Every aspect of your life is controlled 100% by government. Do you want that? Do you want the government to tell you, to allow you to meet with your neighbor? Or they will say, no, you cannot. Do you want the government to do what they done to my son Nathaniel? They denied him university. My son is not allowed to study in Canada anymore because the government blacklisted him in every university in the country. I had to send my son to Virginia, to Liberty University, to USA, because Canadian government is not allowing my son to study. Do you want that kind of future for your children and their children?
Interesting. You mentioned Virginia, the United States, and you have a lot of new friends in the U.S. now. You mentioned the Trump family and some other high-profile political figures like General Flynn. Tell us how you kind of became connected with people like that and what that has meant for you.
Well, again, it was the Canadian government that did it. I know it sounds weird, and it's an irony of this whole situation. But when I was picked up from the middle of the highway, remember when the SWAT team came, stopped us in the middle of the highway, on my knees, my brother David was arrested for nothing. For nothing. He has done nothing. I was this great enemy of the state. I kept the church's doors open. I was officiating the illegal gathering, and my brother David, I guess he was participating in this. So they picked us up and they kept us, Rick, 3 days and 2 nights on concrete, preventing us from sleep. Every half an hour, police would come and bang on the door. We could not sleep for 3 days and 2 nights. So it was on Monday when my brother David came to me after we saw that crooked judge Adam Germain that later on gave me the compelled speech. Remember, the judge said that I have to talk the government approved narration to this pandemic, or I will go back to prison. In other words, he gave me a court order. He gave me an order to lie to the people. Or if I refused to lie to the people, I would go back to prison. It was insane. It has never been done before. This is China, North Korea, Soviet Russia, not democratic Canada. This is insanity. So that's why with my brother David, we said we will never obey. We will never obey this order. This is crazy. So we never did. But going back to the story, I am tired. 3 days, 2 nights without sleep, concrete. I am messed up. My back is hurting. You can't really sit anymore. You just walk in a circle because every bone in your body after 3 days and 2 nights on concrete aches. And my brother David moved towards me and says, Art, what are you going to do now? And I said, David, I have no idea. I've never seen a bigger corruption in my life, even growing up behind the Iron Curtain. This is insane. This is crazy. I don't know what to do. Perhaps I need to go to the States and warn them about what is happening. And that's exactly what we did. I bought the tickets. At that time, no one was allowed to leave Canada, but somehow I bought the tickets for me, for my son. We showed up at the airport and we got in. They let us in. I don't know how that happened, but we got in. We were the only people on the plane. We flew to Colorado Springs and I started my tour. I was thinking I will spend 2-3 weeks in the States and I'm going to come back. However, my first meeting, packed house, huge mega church. When I shared my story, they gave me a standing ovation and they said, this message needs to go across America. Americans have to hear what is happening in Canada. And invitations started to pour in. I had a huge problem of fulfilling all my obligations. If it comes to speaking, I got speaking engagements every single day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, all over United States. I boarded about 100 planes at that time. I spoke at the biggest news outlets and the biggest churches in United States. I was with General Flynn. I met General Flynn in New York City. I was invited to see him, and it's a funny story about this because I'm there with my son and I entered this hotel where I was supposed to meet General Flynn, and there is of course all the security detail. And I said to my son, it looks like some big shot is here because it looks like Secret Service. And as I walked in, this guy was there, short. I never knew how General Flynn looks like. And he says, would you like coffee? And I said, sure, I would love coffee. So he goes, he makes me a coffee, comes back, and then I learned that's General Flynn. That's how we met. Incredible human beings. I've met the most amazing human beings on planet Earth. They are humble. They are lovers of people. They are the most patriotic people I've ever met in my life. They love America. And for the past 4 years, I was privileged to hang around with them. I was privileged to work alongside them and do this ongoing, because don't kid yourself, the campaign didn't start 4 or 5 months ago. We were campaigning for Donald J. Trump 4 years, non-stop campaigning, 24 Reawaken America tours, countless, hundreds of conferences, hundreds of different churches. I was educating Republican Party about socialism and communism. I just got back before the election from Manhattan, New York City, where I was teaching the Republican people on communism, socialism, how dangerous those isms are. So we just kept plowing. And through this plowing of the field, we were able to meet all those different people like Mike Lindell, General Flynn, Eric Trump, his wife, and hundreds of others, Bo Polney, Amanda Grace, Julie Green, Dr. Ardis. I hang around for months with the most brilliant, amazing doctors on earth, biologists, scientists, directors for Homeland Security. You know, I know them all. I hang around with all of those people because we needed each other, and they needed to hear. They needed to hear what is going to happen to America if Donald J. Trump will not win. I think that's my part. That's the part of my family. That's the part that our church contributed into this election, because I simply did my job and I was warning them and warning them and warning them. If you lose this election, America is gone. If you lose this election, Canada is gone. If you lose this election, the free world will cease to exist. If you lose this because of whatever, some people are apathetic, some people think it's not as bad as we say it is. But Canada was such a perfect example, widely documented. My story is widely documented story that they all remembered from the news, Fox News, Sky News, Australia, or Newsmax, or whatever, all those big outlets. So because my story was so well documented, when I showed up and shared what happened to me, they said, "Oh my God, we gotta really rise up and push this great evil, because if we don't do it, we are next."
I'm interested in your reaction to Trump's victory and the size of the victory, the clear mandate that he was given. It was a very decisive win. What's your reaction? Were you surprised by that, or what were you thinking? What are you thinking now?
No, I was not surprised. Listen, I spent so much time in USA. Everywhere I went, there were people telling me that 4 years before they voted for Biden, they didn't like Trump for 10,000 different reasons. But now, everywhere I go, they said, but now we are voting for him. Now we understand. Now our eyes are open, especially after the assassination attempts. People realize that this is something sinister going on. This is a lot bigger than they anticipated. So everywhere I was going, from the taxi drivers to Uber people to clerks in the stores, everyone, everywhere. Listen, New York City, it's all blue, right? No, I was walking the streets of New York City in and out for a number of days, and everywhere I went, there was MAGA hats. They were T-shirts. They were people walking with them, pushing Trump, Trump, Trump. I think that America realized how deep is the deep state and how awful, evil of a monsters they are. During the election, I tell you, the only worry I had was that they will try to cheat again. So even 15 minutes before they announced him winning, I was doing a live show with the Polish people. We had 100,000 people watching us live, and so I was commenting and I was translating from the English to Polish for the Polish people. And even 15 minutes before, I said, I'm not sure. We need Pennsylvania. We are that close, and it can go either way. But we all had hope that the right thing will happen. And from another note, I want to say that the last election has been stolen. And I know, because I was with Michael Lindell, he has all the proof that the election was in fact stolen. And I said, even from that perspective, this man, Trump, he deserves his seat because he won and it was stolen from him. You don't have to like the man. Just from the human point of view, he deserves to be the president of the United States. So when they announced, I'll tell you what happened. All the pressure of the past 4 years kind of evaporated. It was like, I guess we will live, and we will live to fight another day. That doesn't mean the fight is over. No, it's just the beginning. But at least there is a glimpse of hope. There is a sliver of light in this darkness. Because if the American people can do it, that means Canada can do it as well. That means Poland can do it as well. That means Europe can do it as well. If they unleashed every possible machinery, crooked machinery against Donald J. Trump and his family and the people around him, because you got to remember, they wanted in prison General Flynn. They tried to destroy him financially, just like me. I had to remortgage my house 7 times. They arrested his son and said he's going to be assassinated in prison if you don't sign the paper. They arrested Bannon. They have arrested Roger Stone. They've arrested everyone, thousands of other Trump supporters. They made up a story on January 6th, and they unleashed the propaganda that we have never seen on this side of eternity. They have unlimited resources of money, billions, trillions of dollars. They have trillionaires with them. They have Facebook. They have YouTube. They have all this craziness for them. They have Hollywood pedophiles on their sides. They have all this machinery for them, and yet the truth won. And when I saw that, and of course I waited all the way until he gave his victory speech, and which was actually beautiful because he didn't talk about himself. He talked about the amazing people around him that made this possible, and that was really sweet. It was really amazing because there was thousands upon thousands of people that fought for this victory. It was not just one man, it was not just one family. There was amazing people in the background that did everything they could to make sure that this election is not going to be stolen, that the people will have their voice back. So it was a great relief. But also the next 4 years, I want the people to know it's a preparation, because the cancer, I call them the cancer keeps eating until it kills. Those people are like cancer. This evil is like cancer. They need to be cut out. If we don't cut them out, then they're going to do something sinister again. They will keep doing this until they kill. So this is 4 years of preparation. This is 4 years of getting ready. The elites are not done with us. Don't kid yourself. They have other things up their sleeves. So we must unite, especially in our countries here, in Canada, in Poland, in Europe. We must come together and forget about the 10,000 different things that can divide us. Focus on one thing. Focus on your children, people. Focus on the future for your children. This is a time of war, and during the time of war, you need fighters. You need lions. You don't call a lawyer when the Germans are shooting at your children. You grab a gun and you shoot back. We are in the middle of war. You need fighters. Donald J. Trump and his family and the entourage of people around him, they are lions and they are fighters, and they won their victory. I was so happy. Of course, I contacted General Flynn and Clay Clark and all those other people that I know, and I said, congratulations. Great job. Because you gotta remember, they were plowing, they were fighting for 4 years. This was 4 years of great sacrifices, enormous amounts of money, a lot of time, a lot of dedication, a lot of risking. Because you gotta remember, if you were part, it happened to me, I was vilified, attacked. When I arrived from US, I was called Canada's MAGA pastor, attacked by Antifa, viciously slandered by the mainstream media, that I'm some kind of an awful, evil man because I support Donald J. Trump. Now this is behind us. So now we can focus on Canada. We can put our all hands on deck like we did for the United States. Now we can say all hands on deck for Canada.
And do you think that same political flavor is finding its way into the Canadian political landscape?
100%. However, at this moment, I do not see Donald J. Trump yet. That's the problem. Because Pierre Poilievre, as you know, he was for 2 years silent when we were being raped and murdered, literally murdered. He was nowhere to be found. So if you're thinking the Conservative Party that did this to us, because you got to remember, I was imprisoned. I was hunted down like an animal by the Conservative Party, not by the Liberal Party. True. I was hunted down, and I'm still under the boots of the totalitarian regime, which is called Conservative Party in Alberta. So my ordeal is not over. Pierre Poilievre, we begged him. We wanted him to be our champion, to be our hero, to be our freedom fighter, but he decided to betray us. He decided to keep his mouth shut for his political career. Now, freedom is more popular, so you see those players coming out, popping up here and there, using our blood, using our rhetorics, our slogans to benefit their political careers. I want to see a real deal. If you didn't march with us on the streets of our cities, if you were not part of the convoy, if you were not willing to risk everything, in my opinion, you don't deserve to rule over us. So I'm waiting for a champion. I'm waiting for a man that would come. I wish we had Donald J. Trump. So far we got pretendees and con artists. However, I see the sentiment changing in Canada, and I see more and more people are thirsting for someone like Donald Trump, uncompromising man, a man that doesn't do politics because he has to. He does politics because he loves his country. My God, where do we have politicians like this that love our beloved Canada? I wish I could meet them. Where are those premiers that love this country? Where is the prime minister that actually works for the Canadians, not for Klaus Schwab or Bill Gates or some other devil out there? They're signing us into those nonsense agreements, international enslaving, destroying our children, the future of our children. Canadians are hurting. 50% of Canadians cannot pay their bills. That's the newest statistics. We have the biggest amount of suicide ever recorded in the history of our country, the biggest amount of fentanyl overdoses ever seen in our beloved Canada. We are in a big trouble. Canada is in a big trouble. So I'm praying and I'm hoping that God will give us another Donald Trump or someone like him that we can take what's rightfully ours, take back our beloved dominion of Canada.
Yeah, well, Justin Trudeau seems to be the least popular prime minister in my lifetime now, but that doesn't mean there's someone, as you say, there isn't a Canadian equivalent to a Donald Trump on the horizon. You don't even see that, in your opinion, in the smaller parties that are available as options?
Yeah, I see Grant Abraham rising up, United Party. I really like Grant. I've met him multiple times. He actually spoke at some of my conferences. I really like what he has to say, so I'm paying attention. I just saw him a few days ago in Calgary. I like the guy. I like Maxime Bernier as well because he was there with us when we were bleeding. He was arrested himself. He spoke and he's still speaking. I really like that, People's Party of Canada. So there are few. I think, unfortunately, I would say, Canadians are not really, maybe that's changing, but at this moment, I don't think they're ready for someone new. I think we have been played for so long that we only have two options, and it's a revolving door. Few years those devils, few years those devils. But in the end, they all lead us into this globalist cataclysm. They all are leading us to the slaughterhouse. So I'm waiting for the Canadians to realize we need new players. We need new party. We need to start voting for not career politicians, but for neighbors, for people, normal people that know what we're dealing with, people that know with what kind of things we're struggling, not career multimillionaires. Look, Trudeau comes to power, he has few $1 million, and now he is worth $120 million. Where do you think the money came from? You look at those people, those crooked judges, and suddenly they are building palaces. Suddenly they drive those fancy cars. Suddenly they can afford vacations and private jets. Why? How that happened? Corruption, bribery, left and right. We don't need another politician. We need a Donald Trump. He is not a politician. That's why many people didn't like him, because he's not polished like crooked con artists that know what to say. He's a businessman. He looks at this world with the lenses of business. Okay, this need fixing, I'll fix it. This need to be built, I'll build it. Right? He's a doer, not just a talker. Maybe he's not the greatest talker, but in my opinion, he's the greatest doer. Within the first week, it's not even a week, and he has accomplished more than Biden in the past 4 years. Is that not incredible? He's not even sworn in, and he already is stopping the war in Ukraine. He already talked to Putin. He already said that Iran will not have the nuclear bomb, and he's stopping the conflict in Israel. The guy is brilliant, and he is brave. You need someone that is courageous, someone that knows how to do things, not just talk sweet talk and deliver absolutely nothing. And if it comes to the Castro's son, if I had the power, if the miracle happened and I would become the king of Canada, in quote, those people would be charged with treason. those people would be charged with treason. There would be many people charged with treason, and there would be Nuremberg number 2, because we're not talking about imprisonment. We're not talking about few tickets. We've lost tens of thousands of Canadians because of what they did.
And I need to caution you that we are on YouTube, so we just need to temper the language a little bit, as I'm sure you're aware. You've been approached about maybe even making a movie, or someone wants to make a movie out of this new book that you've written. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was actually a couple of days ago on a Hollywood Zoom with actors and singers, and they really would love to turn this into a movie script, a Hollywood style production. So it would be really, really cool. Again, I'm not a perfect man. I'm not the holiest of holies. I love watching movie. I'm guilty as charged. I love movies that are made based on real life, and it would be cool to see one day a production of what happened to me in prison and the background story as well. So this is just a talk right now. I was approached a few times already to think about it, so I have been thinking about it. I just talked to my publisher today, and they are actually, tomorrow we are starting process of turning this book into translating it into a Polish language, and I know there will be other countries that want to translate this book into their language. So that's the next step. Remember, today is the first day, and listen to this. For the past few weeks, we have become number 1 in 5 categories on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca, and today we've sold out every single copy. So this is just few hours. The book is live. We've sold out every single copy, and not this one. This is actually a fake. This is a thief that is stealing my story. He copied my book.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's actually a thief that tries to steal the story. He copied some of my book and put it into his own version illegally.
Wow.
You know, you always deal with cockroaches, and you always deal with hyenas and parasites, right? They cannot survive on their own. They need to suck the blood of others. Lions do not bow. So Google this.
Sure.
And we already ordered many thousands of copies.
There it is.
So they will be available for the people. If your viewers, if you really want to give a bloody nose to the Castro's son, if you really want to give them, a run for their back, if you will, this book has been confiscated by Canadian government already 3 times. I wanted to give the book to my parishioners, and I asked the publisher to send me hundreds of copies so I can give away for free to the people. And guess what happened? They stopped them at the border. They're not allowing them to come in. The Canadian government, those crooked judges, those politicians are terrified of what I am saying in the book. And everything I'm saying in the book is documented. It's either videotape or audio recording. It's very well documented, and they don't want you to know what happened to me and our family. So if you want to give, I shouldn't say that, but I will. If you want to give a middle finger, okay, to the Canadian totalitarian regime, if you want to give the devil a bloody nose, get the book. Christmas is coming. Give it to your friends. Give it to your family members. Give it to your enemies so they can become your friends. Give it to the police officer or a judge or a doctor or a nurse or a politician. Let's beat them at their own game. They offered me $2 million to shut my mouth. Would that not be a funny thing if this book, which is an extended story of what I say during different shows, would go viral like the Get Out video around the world? Would that not be a poetic justice in a way? They've done everything to this guy to shut him up, but he's not shutting up. He's actually expanding his horizon with the book and the upcoming movie that if we'll make a deal with those people. So in a way, they've created me. In a way, they have allowed me to share the story, to let the people know of what happened to me. And I already started to receive reviews of the book. And my intention for the book was, well, there were a few. I want the book to be um, a book that encourages you, a book that lifts you up. It's not a book that poor me, look what they did to me. No, no, no. It's opposite. Look what they did to me. Do not look at what they did to me, but look what God did for me. That's the story. That no matter what, no matter how crazy they were, I came out victorious. So if I can do it, if Artur Pawlowski with a broken English can do it, that means you can do it. Anyone can do it. That's the one thing. Also, I wanted the book to be very light, because you got to remember the story was crazy. The story was heartbreaking. And I didn't want it to be overly dramatic. I excluded certain things from the book because I didn't want this to be a horror story. I wanted people to be able to read the narration of the book and enjoy it. It's a very easy language. Yeah, you got a little bit of history, a little bit of background, every day in prison, and some of the rallies and speeches and those different things. So lots of things. Sometimes I will be taking you from my solitary cell to memories, to another place, because that's what I was doing. I would sit over there and I would just wander off to Africa, or I would wander off to Barbados, which I did the mission field. So I'm telling you a little bit of a background, different things, just to break the horror of what was going on, and then I'm coming back to sell. And people came back to me already, those that read the book, and they said that we achieved what we wanted. It's a very easy read. It's a very entertainment. It's like you can't wait to know what's on another page. I want to know. I want to know. I think they call it the page turners.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it's a very uplifting, a book filled with lots of hope, because that's what I want. I'm a pastor. I've never stopped being pastor. My job, my mission, if you will, is to give people hope, resist evil, feed the poor, take care of the orphans and the widows, and I'm still doing that. And of course, this is a big part of the book, because I want to do this also with the book. I don't want to leave you with, wow, this is a horrible, horrible stuff they did. No. They've unleashed every power at their disposal, every threat that you could master, including assassination attempts. And the guy is still talking. And not only talking, he's still roaring. Do you see me depressed? Do you see me suicidal? Do you see me, poor me, poor me? I'm suing them. We just filed, we're going to file an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada for my conviction. And the fight continues. I've never stopped feeding the people. I never stopped preaching the gospel in the church. I pastor 2 churches, and I intend to pastor even more.
And it's my understanding that at least a portion of the proceeds are going to charity, or to feed the homeless? No?
100%. We have decided. I'll tell you why. Because this book would not come. There will be no book if it was not for the church and the amazing American people and Canadians and people from around the world that actually fought for my life. So I've decided with my wife that we are going to donate every penny back to the charity to feed the poor and save as many lives as possible, because there would be no Artur Pawlowski if it was not this amazing amount of tens of thousands of people that decided to fight for the life of this man. Most of them I've never met. Most of the people that were fighting for me and for my life I've never met. And maybe I will never meet on this side of eternity, and yet they fought for my life. So I talked with my wife, no, we're going to give everything away to the charity. If God wants to bless us, he has a ways of blessing us financially, this way or that way. You got to remember, I know a lots of people around the world, and they are very wealthy people. If some of them will say, you know what, I want to bless this man, I'm going to send him a check. He will send me a check. I don't need to get the funds from the book, because the book in my heart, in my family's heart, is not about Artur Pawlowski. This book is about Canada, is about community, is about family. We all did this together. Without the support of my wife, I would not make it. Without the support of my family, I would not make it. Without the support of my church, I would not make it. Without the support of a big community that fought for my life, I would be still rotting in prison, or I would be already dead. You got to remember that tens of thousands of people were phoning the switchboard. Remember, I shared that story on your show. They called the switchboard because of tens of thousands of people were phoning when I was in prison, Artur Pawlowski switchboard. Tens of thousands of people were phoning Canadian government, demanding my release, putting pressure on politicians. They were American politicians that were putting pressure on Canadian politicians. They were international people, international media. My son testified before the European Parliament. Other politicians, European politicians, Polish politicians that were sending letters to the Canadian government. This is not the story of Artur Pawlowski, because one man cannot do it. This is a story of community. My friends, when the community comes together, we will never be moved. We will never be shaken. We will never be defeated. And that's the story. When we come together, we can achieve everything we want, and those tyrants will not be able to hurt us. But we must come together. We must be in solidarity with each other, and we cannot bow. Lions do not bow before the hyenas.
Yeah. Are you, after having gone through all of this, and here we sit tonight, are you optimistic about the future? Do you think we've turned a corner here? Are we on the right path back, or what's your view?
100%. America is showing the whole world that it can be done. That's one thing. You see, there's nothing worse than a man losing hope. And lots of people were losing hope that we can turn this around. What happened last week, it showed all of us that it's doable. It's possible. We can actually win against this enormous giant, if you will. That's number one. Second, we cannot lose hope for the sake of our children. They need us. They need fathers and mothers to fight for them and their children, our grandchildren. They need us to stand up and fight. Also, I believe that God is giving us, by His mercy, this period of time for us to get ready, because tough times are coming. We cannot stop that. But I believe the next 4 years has been given to us as a gift, like Joseph's time, if you will. The famine is coming, but Joseph was raised for such a time as this to get the nation ready. I think that's, if we're looking about season where we are, I think we are in a season of the time of Joseph. And God is speaking to His Josephs, and He's saying, get ready, tough times are coming, but I am giving you this time of grace, mercy, so you can get the connections, so you can get the farms, so you can build the community. This time is not to vacation. This is not kumbaya, let's cruise and forget about everything. This is a time to get all of us together as a family, community. It's so super important for having the right people around you. You need friends. You need family. The story of Artur Pawlowski is a story that this man would not be able to survive this if it was not for the community around me. It was the community around me that fought like lions for my life, and I survived. Others, as you know, which is the saddest part of the story, the very guys that were with me in Quds, that ultimately I was arrested for, are still in prison. It breaks my heart, because if I was the premier, they would never be imprisoned. If I was the prime minister, they would never be imprisoned. However, I'm not. And they are rotting in prison for nothing. Those boys did nothing. Yes, they said stupid things. We all say stupid things from time to time. But they have done nothing dangerous that would warrant the treatment that they are receiving. They are in prison for 6 years now. 6 years for exercising their God and state given rights. January 6th, some of them got 12, 15 years of imprisonment. That's insane. Does Donald Trump, because I was told from the inner circle that Donald Trump is going to pardon them the same day he's in office, so all of them will walk out of the prison. But you see, we don't have Donald Trump in Canada.
Yeah.
So those boys will be rotting in prison. And they're not just the guys from Quds. There are tens of thousands of Canadians that are still fighting the I won't say it because of the YouTube, the insanity that we were attacked in the past 4 years. So if I was the premier, if I was the prime minister, those people not only would be released, they would be recompensated for the evil that was done to them. And the people that were in charge of this attack on our liberties would be charged themselves. The judges, the crown prosecutors, the chief of police, some politicians would be charged. But that's me. I'm not in the office, so we have to wait for a champion to rise up. I will be running for political office if we're going to have an election. I don't know in what capacity yet, but I'm telling you, I see no way out of this pickle in Canada unless we get involved. We must get involved. Good people cannot sit on the fence anymore. We must engage. Political, economical, educational, every mountain of influence, we must engage because we've lost our beloved nation. Now we got to rise up and fight to get it back.
Yeah, and as you point out, the Trump victory in the United States proves that it can be done, that elections can be won, that change can happen, and you can turn the tide.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's doable. And we just need the right people. And we cannot have politicians anymore. We have to have neighbors, normal people that know what we're talking about, those that are hurting. Politicians are giving themselves a hefty pay raises all the time, bonuses, while we are losing more and more and more. This has to change. There has to be a limit for those people. They cannot just keep going and going forever because they don't want to go. We are truly having a monarchy right now. I see no difference now. Actually, I see difference, sorry. We pay more taxes than during the time of the kings. Because during the time of the kings, we were paying 10%, less than 10%. Now we're paying over 50%. We're being robbed and raped at every corner. And this is just the beginning. They are talking about new taxes. They want to bring new taxes, more taxes, tax upon the tax. It's insanity. So I'm waiting for the Canadian people to finally say, like the Polish people said it, like the Americans said it last week, enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Arthur Pavlovsky, your book, Lions Do Not Bow, available now. Today's the first actual day of availability. Lions Do Not Bow, available on Amazon. Where else can they find this book?
So listen, is this, because I didn't check, is this not saying bestseller now?
It is the #1 bestseller in inspirational spirituality category. Yes, indeed.
You see, so this is the hilarious part of the story. They wanted to do everything in their power to shut me up, and the book becomes a bestseller. It's sorry for that, but when I look at my story, sometimes I look at my story from a little bit of exterior perspective, right? Because it's so complex, it's so crazy. Even when I share it, it's crazy. And I have to detach myself sometimes. I looked from a little bit different position at that story, and like, God, I marvel. They've done everything in their power to shut me up, and you have elevated this story, because that's what it is. It's my story, and it becomes the #1 bestseller. Wow. That tells you, that tells you everything. Do not bow. Do not comply. Do not bow before evil men. Stand up, rise up. If I could do it, if a guy from Poland, from a city that most people don't even know that exists, Calgary, Alberta, with a funny broken English and Polish accent can do it without money, without powerful political friends in Canada. If I can do it, anyone can. You can do it.
And with that, I think that's a great point to sort of end the broadcast on tonight. Pastor Art, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. It's been a privilege. Your story is inspirational. And again, yeah, if people buy the book, the proceeds will be going to help the poor, to feed the poor on the streets. And so I take my hat off to you. And again, thank you so much, and an incredible story of courage. Is there anything else you would like to add tonight before we sign off?
If people want to become a part of what we're doing, go to streetchurch.ca, streetchurch.ca, especially go to the legal fight, because you will be able to read the allegation in our lawsuit. It's incredible. When I read it, my first reaction was, oh my God, what this guy had to go through. And then it hits me, well, that's you. It's just insane. All of it, of course, is well documented, and it's going to be proven in a court of law. And then if you want to help and give the devil a bloody nose, please go to Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, or Indigo, or any other places if you don't like those outlets, and get the book. If for nothing more than just to give a bloody nose to a totalitarian regime that unleashed hell on freedom and our families and our loved ones.
Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. And folks, I will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Catch you then on the flip side.
This has been